Board of County Commissioners, our workshop today, which is April 16th, 2024, and we have a quorum. We're going to proceed with here it is, 4C, Overview of Airports, 5-Year Capital Plan. All right, Ms. Beebe, you are recognized.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the Board of County Commissioners. Today I have with me Isame Ajala, the FDO Director and Assistant County Administrator, Gary Sypecht, our Senior Deputy Director of Airports, Debbie Duncanson, our Deputy Director of Finance and Administration, and Ken Nash, our Fiscal Manager.
Very good.
We have a fairly lengthy presentation covering a variety of topics, including a quick overview of our operating budget, an overview of our 5-year capital plan with funding recommendations, recommendations regarding future PBI airfield improvements, a follow-up on a request to explore development of a consolidated rental car facility, and identification of potential locations for a third airport hotel.
So nice.
So as you all know, the Department of Airports is responsible for the operation management of the county's airport system, which includes PBI and our 3 general aviation airports. In the past 12 months, PBI has experienced record passenger traffic with approximately 7.8 million passengers and 14 airlines. We've continued to be recognized as one of the best airports in the United States in 2023, including being named the 4th best domestic airport by Condé Nast Traveler and the 4th best medium hub airport by J.D. Power. And as one of the biggest economic engines for the county, we also understand that PBI's continued success is important not only to the county but to the entire region. And our goal today is to provide recommendations to expedite critical projects and obtain feedback regarding future airport initiatives. So before I present our operating budget, I want to provide a quick reminder on how the county's airport system is funded. The Department of Airports is an enterprise fund and receives no ad valorem tax support. Operation maintenance costs are funded solely through user fees paid by airlines, businesses operating at the airport, and passengers, meaning we operate a lot like a business. Our capital costs are funded through grants, passenger facility charges, revenue bonds, and airport revenues. And revenues consist of airline revenues and non-airline revenues. Non-airline revenues reduce the overall cost of operating PBI to the airlines, and airline rates and charges are determined in accordance with our signatory airline agreement. Airport revenues may only be used for the operation, maintenance, and improvement of the county's airport system pursuant to the county's grant assurance obligations. So what's the role of the signatory airlines? The signatory airlines have an important role in funding the cost of the entire airport system. They enter into a long-term agreement with the county and agree to assume certain risk in funding the airport. Signatory airlines at PBI include Delta, JetBlue, American, United, Southwest, Bahamas Air, Frontier, UPS, and Federal Express. In a nutshell, if the cost of the system exceeds the revenues required to satisfy our funding requirements, the county has the right to adjust our airline rates and charges to cover those costs. In exchange for assuming this risk, the signatory airlines share in 35% of the airport's net remaining revenues, which are all of the revenues after the costs have been paid. The signatory airlines also have the right to review and approve certain capital projects that exceed $3 million. And the cost per employment is the primary metric that the airlines use to determine costs. PBI has a CPI that has been, or CPE that has been significantly lower than our peer airports, resulting in annual revenue sharing distributions to the airlines every year. For this last year's settlement, I think we will be settling about $2.5 million back to the airlines. With regard to our operating budget revenues, although we're projecting a reduction in revenues of about 5%, this primarily relates to the spending down of the federal COVID grants, not to the loss of revenue related to airport operations. Assuming no change in our revenue streams, we're projecting a conservative increase about 1% in charges for services, which includes things like airline fees, parking, concessions, rentals, and other similar charges. With regard to our proposed budget for expenses, we're projecting a 1% increase in personal services, which are essentially our employee costs, which includes a 6% increase for current positions and a 3% increase for 3 additional positions. The increase in operating expenses is primarily the result of an increase in contractual costs and supplemental requests. Contractual costs include the cost of aircraft firefighting and rescue services provided by the Palm Beach County Fire Rescue, which is increasing by almost $1 million in fiscal year 2025 for a total annual cost of more than $9 million. And law enforcement services provided by PBSO, which is increasing more than $500,000 for a total annual cost of more than $10.4 million. So all of the sheriff's and fire rescue services provided at the airport, including the employee cost and their equipment, we pay for. The reduction in reserves primarily relates to the spending down of grant funds, approximately $14 million, operating expense increases, and the transfer of funds into our Airport Improvement and Development Fund for upcoming capital projects of approximately $9 million. We are submitting approximately $3.4 million in supplemental requests, which includes increases for technology, which includes software to implement a FAA-required safety management system, generator monitoring system, and fire control software. We are also requesting increases for the associated with our common use passenger processing system, which is airline systems. We're requesting increases for security equipment and systems, which includes equipment to satisfy new TSA initiatives and costs related to upgrading our access control systems, and marketing to provide additional funding to support our initiatives associated with air service development. So our total capital request for fiscal year 2025 is approximately $3.6 million. For purposes of this discussion, I've broken our capital requests into two categories based on whether or not it's within our 5-year capital program. The budget for the 2025 capital plan includes approximately $24.9 million in local funding, which is what is reflected in our budget, but it should be noted that our CIP includes funding from other sources, including grants and passenger facility fees, which are not included in the budget request. The budget for capital items that are not associated with the capital improvement program is approximately $9.8 million. These requests will be funded solely with local revenues, include things like the purchase of replacement vehicles and equipment, updates to our baggage handling system, and miscellaneous smaller capital projects for the general repair and rehabilitation of airport facilities. And on the next several slides, I will be discussing our 5-year capital improvement program, including the fiscal year 2025 capital budget in more detail. The table on the slide shows the total project cost from all available funding sources for fiscal year 2025. The department's proposed capital improvement and development budget for fiscal year 2025 is $24.9 million. It's in the column identified as local funding. The remaining columns indicate other available funding sources, including passenger facility fees and grant funding. You should note that the third phase of the Concourse B project shows $8.5 million in passenger facility fee funding for fiscal year 2025. This represents PFC collections towards the partial funding of the project, which will continue in future fiscal years. Although the airlines have authorized additional PFC funding for the Concourse B project, we've received grant funding, the total funding available is not sufficient to start the final phase of the project in fiscal year 2025. The airport's 5-year capital improvement plan will ultimately be determined by funding availability. Historically, our capital projects could be funded on a pay-as-you-go basis using a combination of grants, passenger facility fees, and airport revenues. Due to continued cost escalation in labor and materials, the estimated costs of the upcoming projects exceed the funding available from our traditional funding sources. As a result, we have a significant number of high-priority projects competing for a limited amount of funds. And as you can see on this slide, 3 key projects: the final phase of the Concourse B expansion, the replacement of the aircraft rescue and firefighting facility, and the revenue control building will be delayed for several years based on the amount of funding that is currently available. In order to expedite these projects as well as other critical projects, the department is recommending the issuance of airport revenue bonds to support our 5-year capital improvement program. The next few slides demonstrate what the 5-year capital improvement program will look with and without bond funding. As you can see from the slide, issuing bonds will allow us to start the final phase of the Concourse B expansion project and the R facility and the revenue control building in fiscal year 2025 without sacrificing other critical projects, including terminal elevator replacement project, replacement of the skylight in the main terminal as the first phase of the project connecting the 2 concourses, electrical improvements, and airfield rehabilitation repair projects. So the areas highlighted in blue indicate the projects that will be funded in fiscal year 2026 if bonds are not issued, which includes an additional year of PFC collections for the Concourse B project. And you're going to see in subsequent years that we are continuing to collect PFCs for our Concourse B project. It's essentially consuming our entire PFC capacity if we continue down the road that we're going. We collect about $14 million a year in passenger facility fees, so that means that we would continue to have to collect for this project over a period of years. The area highlighted in green indicates 8 additional projects that can be funded in fiscal year 2026 if bonds are issued. What this shows is by issuing bonds, we're able to free up PFC and local funding for other critical projects. This slide also shows that projects could be completed with and without bonds. And as you can see from this slide, 4 projects will be moved to an earlier fiscal year, and 5 additional projects will be expedited, including the second phase of the project to connect the concourses through the main terminal. So the next 2 slides are very similar for fiscal years 2028 and 2029. As you can see on the slide for 2029, we'll still be collecting funds for the completion of the Concourse B project if we don't obtain an additional funding source. So in summary, issuing bonds will enable us to expedite critical projects, start the final phase of the Concourse B expansion in fiscal year 2025, in addition to the replacement of the ARF facility and the revenue control building, rather than starting in outer years. By deferring the projects, the cost will continue to escalate. We are conservatively estimating that the cost of escalation to be approximately $51 million. In March, we requested an estimate of bond financing costs. The estimated annual debt service was approximately $7.3 million per year for a period of 20 years, resulting in interest roughly equivalent to the estimated cost of the cost escalation, or about $54 million. As indicated in the slide, without bonds, the capital improvement program will include 59 projects with a total projected cost of about $381 million. With bonds, we're able to fund 77 projects with a total project cost of about $554 million during the same period. This slide provides an overview of our PFC-funded projects. As you can see, in a normal year, we collect about $14 million in passenger facility fees for the completion of approved capital projects. If we do not issue bonds, the final phase of the Concourse B project will be funded primarily with PFCs, which means the majority of our PFC capacity will be used for a single project and will result in the delay of other critical projects. So the potential benefits of issuing bonds are that they will help us to expedite 3 major projects, and it will also ensure critical projects needed for asset preservation are not delayed by freeing up traditional funding, including passenger facility fees, which will no longer be pledged to a single large project, and local revenues to ensure that we have matches for grant funding. There's also a continued risk of cost escalation, and we're also eliminating the risk of losing grant funding due to project delays. When we receive a grant, there is a time frame or expiration date on each of the grants. If we're unable to complete the grants within that time frame, you risk losing that funding. So what are the potential risks of issuing bonds? It's really the cost of debt service and the fact that it will result in an increase to our cost per employment to the airlines. So the question is how do we mitigate those costs? So currently, PBI's cost per employment is less than $4 due to the fact that we're still exhausting federal COVID grants. So essentially what's happening is the airlines are paying for the cost of the operation and maintenance of the airport. We're paying ourselves back through federal COVID grants, then we're reimbursing it back to the rate base because the airlines, we're not double dipping basically. The airlines aren't paying for the same thing that we're reimbursing ourselves for. Assuming the grants are fully exhausted, our cost per employment would be about $543, which is still significantly lower than the average CPE for medium and large hub airports, which is about $10 per passenger. So increasing certain non-airline revenues such as public parking and general aviation fees will offset the cost of debt service and ensure that PBI's CPE remains competitive with peer airports. Our parking and general aviation fees have not been adjusted in decades and will continue to remain at or below rates established by our peer airports. Operation and maintenance and repair costs have increased, however, our rates have not. For instance, we just found out last week that the TSA has defunded approximately $600,000 in law enforcement costs, which means that costs will now be borne by the airport. Failing to increase rates will make it difficult to complete critical repair and rehabilitation projects without significantly raising the airline rates over time, making PBI less competitive for air service. Airlines also have approval rights over capital projects over $3 million in local revenues since they bear the ultimate cost of funding the system. Therefore, they will want reasonable assurances that our non-airline fees and charges are comparable to peer airports. Increasing the fees will demonstrate to our airline partners that everyone is paying their fair share of the cost of the system. So I'm going to go pretty quickly through a couple of adjustments that we're recommending. Every single one of these items will require us to come back to the board for further approval. So what is the impact of public parking fee increases? A review of peer airports indicates that the average maximum daily rate for short-term parking is more than $24. Ours is $17. The average maximum daily rate for long-term parking is almost $18. Ours is $13. The average maximum daily rate for economy parking is almost $11. Ours is $7. While I can go into more detail, we're proposing modest increases to our parking rates in 2024 with additional increases in 2027 and 2030 to ensure that our rates increase at the same rate as peer airports with the continued goal of maintaining our rates lower than our closest competitor, Fort Lauderdale. In order to implement these increases, as I mentioned, we will have to bring another item back to the board for board approval. And it's probably also worth mentioning that our cost for maintenance of our parking facilities has gone up. In the past 2 years, we've spent about $6.2 million on repairs and maintenance, and we pay about $7 million a year in operating and maintenance and other general maintenance costs. A review of other airports also indicate that general aviation landing fees are also significantly lower than other airports. This slide shows the potential revenue increases if an adjustment is made to GA landing fees. General aviation fleet fuel flowage fees at PBI have not increased since 1987. Adjustments to both the general aviation landing fees and the fuel flowage fees is warranted. However, the department cannot implement the increases without further board action. We would recommend first consulting with the stakeholders before bringing this item back to the board for approval. So this slide is intended to show the potential impact to the cost per enplanement as a result of issuing bonds. Assuming the COVID-19 grants were fully exhausted, PBI CPE would be $5.43 per passenger. With additional debt service, the CPE would increase to about $7.21. We modeled CPE assuming an increase in public parking fees alone, no other increases, which resulted in a reduction in our CPE of $6 to $6.80. In summary, we will be recommending reasonable adjustments to certain non-airline revenues to help offset the increased cost of debt service and due to the increased costs associated with the operation, maintenance, and improvement of the airport system. If the board supports the issuance of bonds, there are still several steps that will need to be completed, including engaging a consultant to complete a report demonstrating the financial feasibility of issuing bonds and providing project justifications, which will be part of the official statement, obtaining approval of the County Finance Committee, and requesting the board approve the bond resolution, and then finally followed by the award of contracts. Our goal would be to award the construction contracts in 2025. I'm also going to spend a few minutes talking about PBI's airfield limitations and constraints. Although this is not part of our 5-year capital program, we want to take a moment to discuss the need to consider airfield improvements at PBI to ensure our facilities keep up with the anticipated demand. Due to the intersection of the two primary carrier runways and the fact that the general aviation runway is less than 4,000 feet long, PBI essentially operates as a single runway airport on busy days. You can't land and take off airports when you have, or aircraft when you have an intersection. PBI is experiencing record numbers of aircraft operations, primarily driven by general aviation, which means PBI is experiencing delays on busy days based on existing airfield limitations. It's anticipated that PBI will continue to see the growth in aircraft operations.
Yeah, I'd like to.
So I'm going to explain just a little bit about what this means.
This might be a good time to break and hear from Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Would you like for us to weigh in on each item individually, or how would you? Because it's a lot of
entirely
information.
within the board's discretion. If you'd like to, at the end of each item, discuss it, or wait till the end.
Let me suggest that as you go through the different items on your agenda, that if somebody has a question or a comment, that might be an appropriate time to cut in. Commissioner Bernard, I know
Yeah,
you have
just-
something.
yeah,
Go right
just-
ahead, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to make
Sure.
sure. Let me make sure. So you're saying that if we do go with the bond, then that means that we could do the Concourse B expansion phase
Yes.
3.
So we are already planning to start Phase 2 this year. The completion of Phase 1 should be complete by October, we hope. We would be able to immediately start with the next phase. We currently have a CM at risk contractor. We just need to get the guaranteed maximum price. We also have the full design for the art facility and the revenue control building. We have contracts out on the street now for a CM at risk firm for both of those projects, which means we could go straight to construction in 2025 if we issue bonds.
Okay. Now, going to your slide 32, can I follow up,
Sure,
Madam
go
Mayor?
ahead.
So I just want to make sure I understand slide 32. So, yeah, if you can just kind of like explain that to us a little bit, because it seems to me that the baseline, if we did nothing, it stays at the $5.43. And then it would go up to $7.21.
Yes.
If, not with the bond, but that's, if we don't
It's the
increase
additional
the.
cost of the debt service, so we would have an additional annual debt service about $7.3 million a year, which will increase our cost per employment to about $721.
And then if we decide to do some of the parking increases, all these other things that you're suggesting, then it would go down to $6.80.
It would go down to $6.80. Now, also keep in mind that we have increased costs every single year just due to cost escalation. For instance, our parking management contract has gone up and the cost of repair and maintenance of the garages has gone up. So whether or not we issue debt, this cost will continue to creep. So implementing additional non-airline revenue fees, those credit back to the rate base, so that reduces the cost to the airlines.
Go right ahead. Commissioner, Vice Mayor, you're right.
So the $6.80 is including the debt service?
Yes.
But with increases in what we're charging for parking?
And some other
Yes,
things.
that
And-
takes
and
into
some other
account parking
miscellaneous-
only, not general aviation fees.
Okay.
We thought that was the easiest one to model, to just show you what would happen to our cost per employment by increasing our revenues.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Woodward, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you. The parking, page 29, sorry. I was taking notes for at the end of it. I'm glad we're doing this in the middle.
No, it's okay.
So you gave us pricing that's the current rates versus what you're looking to do, and you kind of went through the numbers quickly on what equivalent airports are doing. We're still below, right?
We will always stay below what Fort Lauderdale is charging for parking. The other point that I would like to make to all of you is that our parking is much more convenient. Their short-term parking is equivalent to our long-term parking. So they don't even have a premium parking product, and they don't have an economy lot, they have an overflow lot. So ultimately, we have much more convenient parking. Our short-term and premium now are, during busy days, we're closing those lots frequently because long-term parkers are parking in those facilities because they're so cheap. The other benefit of doing this will shift some of our long-term parkers into the long-term garage because we're only proposing to raise the long-term rate by $1 and economy by $1 in 2024, with additional increases in 27 and 2030. But our goal will always to be less than Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
Competitive.
And you had mentioned in our previous review about doing reserved parking, and
Yes.
would that be a separate this is going
So
away from
that's not
SunPass?
something that I had, I arranged to bring in this particular item, but I've heard from a couple of commissioners that they're interested in valet parking. And also, I would also like to explore the idea of doing parking reservations. I'd recommend that I bring back that in a subsequent item. I believe the most efficient way to implement it would be to work with our current parking contractor, do a pilot program. They're recommending that we use for valet services. Our short-term garage, the benefit of doing that is you can park in the garage, you never have to go outside, take the elevator right down into the terminal facility. It also keeps that traffic off the curbs. The curbs are very congested now. Having those cars back up would be a major problem for us. The other thing is when you're having to have the drivers get into the parking facilities or having to drive around the roadways, which would mean we would need far more attendants to man the valet services. So our recommendation is to do a pilot program in the short-term garage, negotiate an amendment with our current parking contractor, and work with them to come up with an appropriate rate for valet services to bring back to the board for their consideration. The other service that they're able to provide to us is reservations. A lot of airports are using that. It's a very popular service. It doesn't guarantee you a particular spot in a facility. It guarantees you a spot in the facility. Give you an example, Thanksgiving, very busy day, short-term parking garage is closed, but you have a reservation. You come in with a QR code, it scans, you're still able to get into the facility. You'll have to find your spot, but you are reserved a spot. So that, we believe, would also be another nice amenity for our customers. And it would be at no cost to the airport at all. The customers pay $1.99 for that additional service.
So to get us to the $6.80 on page 32, that wouldn't be part of the valet or the reservation. This is just
That would
the small
actually-
increases that you want to
So
do.
that valet services are a terrific customer amenity. It's not a huge moneymaker. Our goal would be to break even, where we're not losing parking revenues as a result of providing the service. So the cost of the valet service will be a bit more in order to reach that break-even point. Initially, we may need to subsidize it a little bit, but I think it would be very popular at Palm Beach. So I do believe that we would at least achieve a break-even point or make a little bit of a margin on the parking. Right now, self-parking, we have a larger margin because there are no additional costs associated with that other than our typical management fee.
But your increases are just $1 for the short term.
For the long term in the economy, it's $1. We're proposing to go from 17 to 21 for short term, and for premium, going from 30 to 36.
Okay. Thank you.
So right now, Fort Lauderdale charges a maximum daily rate of $36 for short term and $15 for long term. And as I mentioned, they don't have an economy lot. And as I also mentioned, their short-term parking is equivalent to our long-term parking. So
That's good. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Perry. Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. My question is in regards to the passenger facility fees and repayment of the bond. So would there ever be a point in time when you would could envision the passenger facilities fee while the bond was in place exceeding what you would what was needed for the operations for that year, or would you accelerate the bond repayment?
So we would propose paying them on the typical 20-year schedule. What would happen with passenger facility fees, the way it works, it's a $4.50 charge on every enplaned passenger. We apply to the airlines and the FAA to approve projects, capital projects. We can use that funding for a local share, and we can also use it to fund our projects. So there wouldn't be a scenario where we would want to use our PFC capacity. In fact, there is a big push throughout the United States with airports to increase the PFC because the federal funding no longer is sufficient to fund these big projects.
I guess let me restate my question. Would you be able to use, because the downside of this is the interest, right? So if you increase the passenger facility fees and you add in your general aviation landing fees and all the non-flight related fees as you're proposing, would there come a time, because we share a third of the passenger facility fees with the airlines under contract, right? That's what you said, any excess?
Maybe we don't share passenger facilities fees with the airlines. That's actually to us solely. It's a funding source for capital projects. So did I?
You said 35% of it would
Oh,
go.
no, I'm sorry. We share 35% of our net remaining revenues, which does not include passenger facility fees. Net remaining revenues includes our revenue streams, local revenues. It does not include restricted revenues. For instance, like bond revenues. It doesn't include passenger facility fees. It
Okay.
wouldn't include CFCs and things like that. That refers to our excess revenues.
Okay, so
So
let
when
me
we
go.
have a good year, it just means that they get to share on the additional revenue.
Okay, so let me go back then and ask that question then now with this additional information. So would you then be able to accelerate the repayment of the bonds rather than giving a third of that money back to the airlines?
So that's a great question, because the way our capital projects are amortized, the airlines do pay for the project, but they don't pay for it until we get to the end of the project. And typically, for a larger project, they pay it over a period of 25 to 30 years. So that actually, I guess what I'm saying is our projects hit the rate base and they start amortizing them at the time that they're completed. Because we're not completing these projects timely, that means the airlines aren't paying for them. That means we have more net remaining revenues. So we're paying money back to the airlines that we cannot invest in these projects because we're not completing them.
All right, I appreciate that explanation.
The airline rate model is very confusing. It took me many years to wrap my head around it, but because the airlines share in the risk, they get to revenue share, and the revenue share is quite a large amount.
Very good. All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Beebe. There's no other comments or questions? You may go ahead and proceed with the proclamation.
So back to the airfield. The FAA uses a metric called annual service volume to determine when an airport will reach its annual capacity, which is the maximum number of aircraft operations that can be accommodated in an airport. The air service volume is an indicator of when airfield improvements should be implemented to address capacity deficiencies. PBI's annual service volume, or the point at which PBI's airfield will exceed its capacity, resulting in unacceptable delays, is 220,000 annual operations. The FAA recommends planning for airfield improvements when the annual operations reach 60% of the annual service volume, or 132,000 operations, and implementing the improvements when the annual operations approach 80% of the annual service volume, or 176,000 operations. As of February 2024, PBI had more than 173,000 operations, which is 5 years sooner than forecast in our 2018 master plan. Based on current forecasts, PBI is anticipated to reach 100% of its air service volume between 2028 and 2032. In other words, if no further action is taken, PBI will reach its maximum capacity in 4 to 8 years. So as you are all aware, the draft environmental assessment for the North County Airport runway extension project was issued, which raises the question of whether or not the extension will have any impact on the level of PBI's operations. Based on analysis of the general aviation aircraft operating at PBI, we believe about 10% could operate at the North County Airport. However, it's highly unlikely that this would occur. As indicated in the draft environmental assessment, we estimate a relatively modest increase in activity at the North County Airport based on the extension. However, assuming a small percentage, if you want to go to the next slide, a small percentage of the general aviation operations shift to the North County Airport, we're projecting that PBI may have an additional 2 years before it exceeds its annual service volume. And I'd like to be clear, we're talking about general aviation aircraft, we're not talking about commercial aircraft. There will be no shift of commercial aircraft from PBI to the North County Airport. It's not a Part 139 airport, and it's also prohibited in our interlocal agreement with the City of Palm Beach Gardens. So what does this mean if we do nothing? PBI will experience increased delays, reduced commercial air service based on the uncertainty caused by the delays, increased aircraft emissions due to aircraft idling on the airfield, and an increased frequency of alternative headings by the air traffic control tower in an effort to reduce delays and increase aircraft separation. This is important because our current noise abatement program provides for straight-out departure. Based on that program, the county's invested millions of dollars in property acquisition and sound insulation to mitigate incompatible uses. Increased use of alternative headings means that more people within the vicinity of the airport will be impacted by aircraft noise throughout the year. In order to ensure that PBI does not exceed its airfield capacity, we're recommending that we start the preliminary plan needed to implement the extension of the general aviation runway, which was contemplated in the two most recent master plans. Prior to the Great Recession, the county started an environmental review for the project. However, as a result of the recession, the number of operations significantly declined. Therefore, only portions of the project were implemented. After the approval of the 2018 master plan, we anticipated the need to move forward with the project in the near term. However, the pandemic resulted in a drastic reduction in operations, followed by an unanticipated surge in operations over the past couple of years. As indicated on the slide, the timeline for implementation of this project would take 10 to 12 years, with the preliminary implementation and advanced planning taking about 4 years to complete. Based on the current number of operations, we believe it's critical to start the preliminary planning process this year to ensure future aviation demand can be accommodated. So the next steps would include preliminary project planning, which would include consulting with the stakeholders, the FAA, and potentially affected communities to determine the best path forward. We would also need to engage in consultant selection, identifying the potential issues requiring review, and then ultimately the start of the environmental process. As I indicated, this is a very, very long process, which is likely to take more than a decade to complete, and I like to keep saying I'll be retired before it's done. However, failing to start the process will have a significant impact on the future of PBI. Therefore, we would strongly recommend starting this process this year. And to just be clear, what I'm talking about is preliminary planning. It's not design, it's not construction. Just the initial planning process will take us several years. I think 2 to 4 years is actually optimistic. The North County Airport environmental assessment took us more than 5 years to complete, and that is a more simplified process than we're likely to have to do for PBI.
Very good.
And again, every single thing that we do as a part of this, we will need to come back to the board for approval, including approval of a consultant agreement. Does anyone have any
You're on,
questions?
go right ahead.
Okay.
You're still flying.
Okay. At a recent board meeting, we were also requested to explore the possibility of moving forward with a consolidated rental car facility. And they're referred to in the airport industry as CONRACs. So what is a CONRAC? A CONRAC is a complex that hosts numerous rental car agencies, and they're found at airports throughout the United States. They include offices and parking, fueling, car washes, and other related services. In other words, they're basically one-stop shopping for rental cars. And so why do airports build them? CONRACs reduce the need for each rental car company to maintain and operate separate facilities and separate busing operations. They also reduce traffic congestion by eliminating the number of shuttle buses operating at the terminal facility and are more convenient for customers to access. Just to give you kind of an order of magnitude, right now we have 8 rental car concessionaires at the airport who are all operating shuttle buses. Some have consolidated buses, but there are a large number of buses circling the airport for rental car pickup. We also have a couple of non-concessionaire rental car companies that operate at the airport as well. So based on our actual rental car transactions, our consultants determine the facility requirements for a CONRAC at PBI as shown on this slide. What we determine is that PBI will initially need about 20 acres for the development of a CONRAC to accommodate demand in the near term, and will ultimately need about 32 acres to accommodate demand through 2050. We reviewed 5 potential sites for the location of a CONRAC facility and ultimately narrowed it down to sites 1 and 2. Just for time, I'm not going to go through why each of the sites were selected, unless you'd like me to.
That's all right.
Okay. And I also wanted to note that we did not consider a location within the terminal area for a number of reasons. Construction near the terminal would impact airport operations, including airline operations, making it operationally complex. The areas adjacent to the terminal also need to be reserved for future terminal expansion. The graphic on this slide shows the potential expansion of the terminal facilities. Although this is beyond our current planning period, it's important to ensure that the future development is compatible with the continued growth of the airport. So, as I mentioned, we narrowed it down to 2 sites. We considered Site 1 as a potential location for a number of reasons. The property is subject to a short-term lease with Career Source that will be expiring in less than 5 years, so it'll be available in the near term. It's in close proximity to the terminal area, but not in a location that would significantly impact airport operations during construction, and has direct access to Belvedere Road. The primary drawback to the site is it's only 5.8 acres, which means structured parking would be required, and it wouldn't be expandable for future uses such as employee and public parking. And if you go back to the prior slide where it shows the expansion of the terminal facility, you can see that it encompasses pretty much all of our employee and economy parking. Site 2 was acquired over several years for future airport support, including the relocation of employee and economy parking, as well as the development of Conrack facility. However, we had not gone through the process of defining facility requirements. As a result of this exercise, we have confirmed that Site 2 is the ideal site for the construction of Conrack for several reasons. It's a large site capable of accommodating all the facility requirements at grade in the near term. By construction at grade, the facility remains expandable for future needs through vertical development. There's also adjacent properties that could be considered for acquisition to support future airport operational needs. The facility could be built out with no impact at all on airport operations since it's located north of Belvedere. It also wouldn't result in the displacement of any existing tenants. It has direct access to Belvedere, which provides future opportunities for intermodal connections. It could eventually be connected directly to the terminal through an automated people mover. I want to be clear, though, we would recommend initially starting with a consolidated busing operation. However, we would recommend, again, electric buses, which would be better for the environment and it would reduce the busing footprint. So this slide shows the conceptual development of a Conrack on Site 1. This slide shows the potential development of a Conrack on Site 2. The areas in blue are the property that we currently own, the county owns, and the areas in orange indicate potential areas that we could acquire. And if we are able to acquire all of the property within that area, we would also recommend potentially including a linear park around the area as a benefit to the surrounding communities. This is a very industrial-looking site. We do think that we could make it a little bit more of an amenity by adding a linear park within this location. So how much does it cost? After narrowing down the potential sites, we asked our consultants to provide a rough order of magnitude of construction costs. The estimated cost of constructing on Site 1 is approximately $315 million, which is higher primarily based on the need to build structured parking. The estimated cost of constructing on Site 2 is about $171 million, or about 46% less, primarily due to the fact that it can be constructed at grade. It should be noted these estimates do not include design fees, soft costs, construction contingencies, which would be about another $60 to $120 million, and it does not include the cost to acquire additional property. And here are some examples of Conracks recently constructed at comparable airports. It should be noted that these costs were established pre-COVID, therefore it's anticipated the costs will be higher based on recent cost escalation. So Conracks are very expensive, so how do you fund them? Conracks are funded through the establishment of a customer facility charge, which is a fee that's charged to the rental car customers on a per transaction basis for the operation, maintenance, and development of a Conrack. The rental car companies pay for the lease of the ground, but the costs associated with the operation, maintenance, and improvement of the facility, including shuttle bus operations, are solely funded by the CFC. In other words, rather than paying the cost to operate and maintain separate facilities with separate busing operations, those costs are funded through CFC collections. So the amount of the CFC would depend on the planning timeline. If the board would like to start the planning process with commencement of construction in the near term, say the next 5 years, we would recommend starting collections at the $8 level. If the board prefers a longer planning horizon, we would recommend the implementation of a CFC now in anticipation of a consolidated rental car facility, but at a lower level. If the board would like to pursue the future development of a CONRAC, the next steps would include consulting with the rental car companies to discuss a future CONRAC facility, including the dates for project implementation and completion, establishing a customer facility charge in anticipation of future construction of a CONRAC to create a dedicated funding source, refining the facility requirements, including preparing a conceptual plan, schedule, developing a financial plan, property acquisition planning and design, issuing CFC revenue bonds, and finally awarding construction contracts. And while I admit I was skeptical about this question when it was first came up, I really do want to thank Commissioner Bernard for expediting our planning. I believe that the implementation of a contract will be necessary at some point in the future, and the final timing, however, is really up to the board, so I'm seeking further guidance from the board, whether it's something you'd like to pursue in the short term, the long term. In the interim, I would say if the board has any interest at all in developing a consolidated rental car facility, we should look toward implementing a CFC now in anticipation of moving forward with a facility at some point in the
Thank
future.
you. Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Laura, just from the perspective of the rental car companies, why would they want to do like a consolidated rental car facility?
So they can divest themselves of the operation and maintenance of their separate facilities. Most of the facilities on Belvedere are on leased land. A couple of them are on airport property that's leased land. So they would no longer need to operate and maintain those facilities separately. They wouldn't need to have a separate busing operation. Busing operations are expensive, I know, because we operate one just to the economy parking. So there is some consolidation of costs that is beneficial to the rental car companies. I want to be completely honest, though, we have not discussed this at all with the rental car companies, so we would want to go back and have a conversation with them to find out, do they support this? What are their thoughts as far as the CFC levels? I can tell you that whether or not they have buy-in, airports can require them to operate if they want to be a rental car concessionaire at the airport from a consolidated facility. I wouldn't want to go that route. I would certainly want to have their buy-in.
Follow up, Madam Mayor.
Yes, go right ahead.
Like, how would it impact traffic on Belvedere if we go that route?
It would certainly help to reduce it because right now we have buses circling the terminal area in Belvedere. A number of the facilities are located north of Belvedere, which means that they're getting onto Belvedere and they're coming onto Turnage to get to the airport, and they're going in circles all day long.
Okay. And like this potential facility, what's the potential for, how do you get like from the airport to the facility?
So I would initially suggest that we implement a busing operation in the very beginning, and then eventually collect funding for an automated people mover over Belvedere Road directly into the terminal. Its alignment is pretty good, where we think we could accomplish that. It's not going to be an inexpensive project, but if you start with a busing operation, that's something that we could fund at some point in the future.
Follow up, Madam Mayor.
Sure, go ahead.
And like for that potential automated system in the future, can we potentially seek type of grants or funding opportunities for it in the future, or? That's a Todd question. Todd, give me some money.
Money man.
Well, he's asking in addition to CFC. I imagine there are potential funding sources beyond the CFC, but they are generally pretty self-sustaining because the CFC is a dedicated funding source, and the only thing that you can use it for is for the operation, maintenance, and improvement of that facility.
Okay. Yeah, because for me, I'd love for if someone can leave the airport and to not get into any car eventually, not right away, but to be able to get to that rental car facility if we go for that.
So there's another benefit of that site, which I'll talk about when we're talking about potential airport hotel locations, because it frees up the career source site. So I think there's another opportunity there.
Okay. Thank you, Madam.
This is an interesting idea that Commissioner Bernard had. And my question is, can we not put this facility within the airport grounds so that you would not have to leave the airport to get to that, to get to the rental car businesses?
So we looked at several options, including within the terminal area, but putting a large structured facility next to the terminal would not be recommended if you want to ever expand the terminal for aviation uses. If you want to go back to that other slide, we'll give you an idea of. So you can see, like I said, this is not in our current planning period, but there is going to be at some point in the future where PBI will need a Concourse D. This would allow you to expand both Concourse A and Concourse D. So I would not recommend doing a large structured parking within the terminal area. The beautiful thing about this site is that you can construct it without any impact on airline operations, and you can eventually connect it directly into the terminal with an automated people mover, which is what a lot of the Conrac facilities.
When you talk about a people mover, are you talking like with MII, Miami International, where
It
you
could-
get into a tram, or are you talking about a walking pedestrian
either.
way?
It could be either.
Either way.
could be
So
either.
you would be able to get off your flight, go through baggage claim, and not leave
Yes.
the airport facility and go right into a rent-a-car?
It is the
Excellent.
it is the closest location to the terminal that is not within the terminal area and will not impact our operations.
Okay. So we could have that rental-car facility directly
Yes.
within the,
If you wanna
within
go
the
back to the picture.
ambit of the,
So we-
of the airport.
So we drew a little line to show how the automated people mover would go across Belvedere.
Again, is this, when you say people mover?
It could
I
be-
think of
it could be a
Disney
moving
World, you know,
walkway, it
but
could be
we're
a
not
tram.
talking Disney.
No, I'm not, no, not a monorail.
Okay, we're talking tram, right? A
Yeah.
tram
It
like
could be a
MIA.
tram, it could be
Okay.
a moving walkway. Obviously, we would need to go back and do some planning and figure out
Okay.
exactly what would be the type of facility
So-
that would make the most sense.
Okay, very, very good. And then one other thing, would not these rental car companies want to buy into this idea? So that instead of having Hertz, we could get a bigger one for, depending on who wants to pay the most, to have this amazing opportunity here at PBI?
So we've not had a single conversation with any of the rental car companies about
Okay.
this. That we will go, if the board wants us to explore this further, we'll go have meetings with the rental car companies to find out their level of interest. I do think that there would likely be interest in a facility like this because, like I said, they are able to divest some of the operational aspects of their operations to the airport.
It'll
So
be-
there is some benefit of doing it.
If you could, when you come back to the board for this, if you could bring also comparisons with Fort Lauderdale and as well as Miami. I think those are the two airports that are closest to us also in terms of passenger. I'd like to ask Commissioner Woodward, please recognize.
Thank you, Mayor. One question about, with the rental car companies, we've kind of talked about how they could benefit by consolidating, but also the customer experience would be very beneficial because I know not everyone actually arrives here planning to rent a car. Sometimes that kind of happens last minute when you're traveling and you're like, oh, I need to rent a car. And if we have one giant facility where we're shuttling people to in the beginning, but the people mover, Metro mover, I kind of visualize it as a train that would, just people get on it. It's looping every 10 minutes or so to kind of take people into this area. I mean, it would be a huge benefit on the customer experience level. I talk about it a lot, and I will talk about it some more, but having a dedicated funding source for transportation, airports benefit from this as well. Miami-Dade and Broward are both using part of their transportation money to fund their airports for stuff like this, because you said you're restricted on a lot of how the money can be spent, but at transportation, however we move people, we can use that money towards something like this that we could even get matching grants for. And just to put it out there, if we're able to do something like this to move people across there, that could pave the way for the future of bringing people into downtown West Palm from that with a similar people mover, however that ends up coming. So, I mean, that's future planning on how we move people. And if they don't want to rent a car, but they still want to get to our convention center or something else into downtown, this is it's one more way to connect people from the airport into our downtown part.
So we've had some very preliminary discussions with the TPA regarding this very topic. I think it would be very difficult to bring in any sort of rail or anything like that into the terminal area, but bringing it along Belvedere at this location would be ideal, because then you can get the customers directly to the airport, into the terminal facility. I think that this is many, 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 many years down the road, but I do think that location would be really good for intermodal access.
Would be awesome. Commissioner Weiss?
Thank you. I want to go back to the expansion and talk about really what we're talking about doing, because you weren't real specific
Okay.
on the expansion and what the vision for that is, because since
So in 2018, when we came to the board, the runway expansion recommendation was about 10,000 feet. We believe it makes more sense to go back to the prior master plan, which had an 8,000-foot expansion. It would accommodate all of the aircraft operating at PBI. It's at this point, we think that it may be in excess of our needs for today. That project went through the process. There were no significant impacts. We think moving forward with that project, because the FAA has already seen it, already made some determinations about its impacts, that it would help to move that project forward a little bit more quickly.
So when you're talking about 8,000-foot expansion, can you?
To the general aviation runway, if you want to go back. So that's the really short runway that's located on the south side of the airport,
Okay.
next to the primary
There it
east-west runway. So it's just to the south of the long 10,000-foot runway. The proposal would be to extend that to about 8,000 feet.
So it also bisect your crosswind runway.
We would shorten the crosswind runway and remove the intersection so that they can operate. They wouldn't be operating entirely independently because of the separation between the two, but it would allow them to operate more independently so that more aircraft can get in and out of the airport. By also removing the intersection, we would talk about doing a little extension to the north so that that can continue to be used for general aviation purposes. What was the ultimate length that we were?
4,000.
So 4,000 feet for the crosswind would be retained.
So, and then in terms of the way it's planning to be operated, because of its proximity to the other runway, it's not you're not proposing where you have multiple aircraft departing concurrently?
So what we've been told in some very preliminary discussions by air traffic control is that on the slow days, they just continue to operate the way they're currently operating. You're going to have to probably opine on how they would use the two together.
Sure.
We've had different conversations about that.
Gary Sipek, Senior Deputy Director. Basically, the runways, when that runway is extended, they would still be dependent on each other. You won't have simultaneous arrivals due to the separation. You will have some staggered departures off there, but we will get a capacity, a benefit out of the two runways, more so than we have today with that small runway.
Okay. All right, thank you.
One more, sorry. And
Still
then
thinking.
when are you planning, what's your community engagement plan for this?
So we'd like to go to the next Citizens Committee on Airport Noise to discuss the preliminary planning and to get their input on consultation with the surrounding communities, just to make sure that, we've engaged with the communities before we move forward with the consultant's contract.
Okay.
I'm going to clarify that a little bit. We may actually come back with a consultant's contract to do community engagement. That may be part of it.
Okay. As you know, I think that's very important.
I agree.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Weiss. Vice Mayor Marino, you're recognized.
Thank you. So far, what I've seen, I like. And I think the consolidation of all of the car rentals on the north side of Belvedere is the better plan, because we really don't want to contain ourselves on the airport site for our future expansion. And I think that the rental car, I'm not an expert, and I think that the rental car companies, if you ask them what their costs are now versus what they would be if they were doing this, CFC, I think it would be a benefit to them. But as you said, you need to engage them in this conversation. And there's also in this plan is the acquiring of additional land. The fact that we can do this just at grade is phenomenal because everybody knows that structured parking is so much more expensive than at-grade parking. And if we could, in the future, if we need, we have the ability to do that
Right.
on this property and not do anything to the airport property and whatever expansion we need at the airport. And I do want to hear the conversation about the airport hotel. So I am in favor of what you've suggested so far, even the debt. I mean, I understand nobody wants to hear the word debt, but it sounds like it would be taken care of by itself from additional parking and additional fees that the airlines will pay. Obviously, that's going to get passed on to the people getting on the planes, but as you said, we are less expensive and will continue to be less expensive than our surrounding airports, which is important. And we want people to feel comfortable in using our airport, secure in using our airport. I like the idea of valet. It is something that Lauderdale offers. It does give us a competitive edge if we have valet parking here. And having the valet parking, getting in and out of your car in the structure as opposed to at the terminal is a great idea. And if we do have a consolidated area, I would see somehow a direct route from the consolidated area to the airport instead of having to go down Belvedere, come back around. But I'm not an engineer. You're going to get people to do that. But I see, efficiency is what's most important, and we can't keep kicking the ball down the field. We need to make a decision. And so so far what you've proposed, I would be in support of. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Bernard, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Laura, I think Commissioner Weiss and I, we represent most of the Westgate area. And so I guess my concern is, how do we make sure that as we're making some of these plans that we're looking at enhancing the Westgate and their CRA? How do we do that just to make sure that we're improving the lives of those residents?
So one of the things that we will do is a community engagement plan. We're actually required by the federal government to do community engagement when we do large projects like this. So certainly we would meet with representatives of the CRA to talk about how can we make it not just a large parking lot, but also amenity for the surrounding area. One of our thoughts was to provide, and because this is in PowerPoint, it looks like a box, but our architects and landscape folks could do a much better job than that. If we're able to acquire some of that additional property, what I would recommend is we build a linear park around the facility. I don't know if any of you've seen the High Line or the rail trail in Charlotte or some of those similar facilities. It's a linear park. It's a kind of narrow park in an urban area that provides a location for people to walk, art, all sorts of different experiences. So that's what I would suggest, particularly if we're able to acquire that additional property, to be able to make it more of an amenity to the surrounding neighborhood as opposed to just a large parking facility.
When you mentioned that, I know down the street we have Mounts Botanical Gardens. Is it possible to incorporate them into some of the potential park? I'm just thinking out loud, but
Anything's
Nice.
possible.
That'd be nice. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Be nice. Thank you, Commissioner Bernard. Commissioner Woodward, you're recognized.
Thank you. And I vote for Mounts Botanical to come here. That'd be beautiful. I meant to ask earlier, how much land acreage right now is being occupied by rental car facilities down? It's mostly on Belvedere. Are there some in other parts around the
Yeah,
airport?
I don't have that number handy, but I certainly can get that back to you. It is pretty much all of the area from Congress to the east is rental car facilities. Some of that land is owned by Palm Beach County Enterprise, leases a large piece of property from the airport for its rental car operation. We have another adjacent acre and a half within that location. I don't know the exact sites of I think it's Budget and Payless that are over there as well. It would also allow us to remove some of the rental car facilities that are located in the center of PBI right now to make it available for other uses, which may include realignment of our roadways.
So some of that we own, but others, it's privately owned and leased to the rental car.
Yeah.
And could that, if the rental car facilities move from there, would that open it up for redevelopment?
Absolutely, 100%, which is another nice thing about this. It changes that entire corridor.
Okay.
It does, it does. Thank you so much, Ms. Beebe. All right, we're going to continue on with your report.
So we were also asked to identify sites for the development of a third airport hotel. We've identified 3 potential sites for board consideration. Site 1 is the acre-and-a-half lot that is next to, actually that's site 3, is the acre-and-a-half lot next to Enterprise. It's the large detention area. That's about an acre and a half. It's available immediately. It's smaller. It's not walkable to the terminal facility. The site is currently available for potential lease, and we have had a few inquiries about the site over the past couple of months, so that is something that we can make available immediately. Site 2 is the location of our air freight building. This building would need to be replaced prior to being able to make it available for a hotel site. It was chosen due to the fact that as frontage on Belvedere, the site is larger and it is in close proximity to the terminal. However, it's not available in the near term because we would need to rebuild an air cargo facility to house those operations. The site 1 is the site that I'm actually most excited about. This is the Career Source site. This property will be, the lease will be ending in less than 4 years. It's a preferred location because it has direct access to Belvedere, and it's also walkable to the terminal, and it could accommodate a larger hotel development because it's 3 acres. You can build a hotel on an acre and a half. A 3-acre site is a little bit nicer size for the development of a hotel. The other thing about this site is it's directly across the area that we've been discussing for the future consolidated rental car facility. So if we put in an automated people mover, it could actually connect through the hotel to the terminal facility. And it would be today walkable to the terminal. There's a sidewalk that goes from our administration building next to Career Source. That could be extended to the site, so it could be walkable to the terminal.
It's cool.
So I very much like this site. We've had no discussions with Career Source about not renewing their lease further beyond the existing term. I do know that they're not fully using the building, and they have asked or inquired about potentially giving some of the facility back to us. So it might actually be perfect timing that they may need a smaller
County-owned
facility.
facility? Is it county-owned, Ms. Baker?
Yes,
Let me
that-
ask you something. There's a number of great airports I've been to where the hotel will be on the top floor of the airport facility, the passenger area, obviously not in line with any FAA regulations against height. Is that a possibility of a site that would not take up land but would just be built on an upper floor of the
I
airport?
think anything's possible. It would be very challenging, and it would have some impact on our airline and airport operations, which is why my preference would be the Career Source site, which is walkable to the terminal facility and would not have any impact on our operations while it's being built.
I wonder if we could just look at that, because there's so many possibilities of being able to take the elevator up to the hotel or meet people at the hotel. The lobby we would own this hotel, would we not?
So eventually, every lease that we have, we own the facilities at the end of the term. So we actually have 2 airport hotels. One is the Airport Hilton. The other is the Home 2 Suites next to the Drive Shack. Right now, they're development site lease, but at the end of those terms of those agreement, we will actually own the facilities.
We will own those facilities as well.
We will own the facilities.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'm excited about Site 1 and with the potential of, being right there next to the airport where it's just walkable. Or it could, if we do the automated mover, then it can pick up the folks and take them straight to the airport. So that would be my preferred airport site. And, I know it'd be hard for me to say I'd like to see it as part of the airport or on top of the airport, because, building that would be like pretty much impossible. So that's my thoughts.
It would be very, very expensive. We've even looked at consolidating our security checkpoints, which would require us to build out from the building, and it was just cost prohibitive to be able to do that. Plus, we have a very old structure. It was built in the 1980s, so
That would be something that would be, just to
it would
jump
be
in with you.
very
let's-
expensive.
then let's not look into it. Let's focus on those 3 sites that you
Yeah,
already.
and Madam Mayor, I'd like to add also, I know for me, if we're going to go down that route, I would prefer that, of course, I don't want us as a county to own it. I would love for us to lease it. And so in that way, we're not in that business. And so now it's a lease. And so we can get the right operator. And then also, as we're having different discussions later on, if we decide to go this route, then, we'd have to find a place for a career source. And, with some of the other discussions, I'd love to put them in another place if it's possible.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Vice Mayor Marino, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Site 1 is the ideal site. I don't believe we should own the airport. I think, of course, that we should continue what the airport does, where we are a leaseholder. Isn't that one of our greatest revenues for the airport right now?
It is, which is why we never want to sell airport property, because when you lease the property, that continuing revenue stream can be used for the operation and maintenance of the airport. If we sell property, which it's highly unlikely we'd be able to do that with the FAA approval, but if you do that, then that funding that you receive is restricted to capital. So you get a one-time, capital infusion that you can't use for operation and maintenance. Right now, we've done so well with real estate. It's second only to parking in terms of our non-airline revenues. Right now, parking is about $20 million a year. Real estate is about $18 million a year, and rental cars is about $15 million a year. So those are our 3 highest non-airline revenue sources.
How big is the career source? Or let me rephrase that question. I sound like an attorney. Let me rephrase that question. What is their current need for square footage? Do you have any idea?
Not off the top of my head. I would need to meet with them to have a discussion. And again, I
size?
haven't spoken to them about relocating either yet.
What
But-
size is the building right now?
Do you know?
I do not know offhand.
Yeah,
We can get that.
we certainly can get back to you with that information.
Okay. Because as you said, if they're not using the whole thing and we're looking at a building that's maybe, 5,000 square feet, so.
It's
It
bigger than
may
that.
It's
be
bigger than
larger
that?
than that.
Okay.
It's a pretty large building. It's an older facility, and it does require more maintenance because it is an older facility.
Okay. But again, I think it's a good idea to relocate them and give them notice of that. And I think as a leaseholder for a hotel, an airport hotel that's connected right to the concourse is a great idea. Thank you.
Commissioner Bernard, did you have?
No.
Okay, very good. All right, Ms. Beaver, you can continue. Thank
That
you.
was the end of my presentation.
That was in. Excellent, excellent. Okay, we have Commissioner Weiss.
Right, so I support the idea of you moving forward with your projects through bonds, issuing bonds to support that. I think that's the right way to go. I support the CONRAC idea. I think you should probably take the next steps, talk to your rental car companies and see if there's any interest on their behalf, but that sounds really appealing to be able to, and the redevelopment of Belvedere could potentially really help with the Westgate area as well. So, and then if you decide to move forward with the idea of an additional hotel, I agree, Site 1 is best suited for that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I want to say I agree. I support the bonds. I think that's the best approach. I support implementing the CFC now for the rental car facility now. I believe it was 2030 was the sooner option.
Yes.
I think the rate of growth, that would be probably the better route, in my opinion, instead of, was it 2035?
So it depends on how quickly you want to build. It'll drive the actual CFC amount. So if everyone wants us to come back with some additional recommendations as far as, the implementation of the CFC and a little more timing about or discussions about our a little more information of the discussions with the rental car companies, we can go ahead and do that. So I would say the next steps is do an analysis of what should the CFC be, based on really the preliminary build, which is that maybe 19 acres, 17 to 19 acres. I would recommend, if we move forward with the CFC, that we look towards purchasing those adjacent properties before they're no longer available. We do know that at least one property owner has some interest in selling to us, so it does make sense to go ahead and do that. And you can use CFCs for the acquisition of property.
I also support purchasing those properties because, to your point, the location, you just can't replace that with anything. So I do support purchasing that or having you guys look into that. That would be amazing. I do support consolidating, obviously, the car facilities. The runway that you said it would be more useful, going back to, I believe it was 8,000
Yes.
fee. I support that. I think that was amazing. And I just wanted to say thank you again, kind of bringing this to us before it's already baked. We get to hear, we get to analyze, and actually have some discussion before moving forward. I really do appreciate that, so thank you.
All right. Commissioner Bernard and then Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Okay. Sometimes I'm a little crazy, so, I remember.
I think we know who we're going to name it after.
No, so, when I brought this up in January, in January when I brought this up and, I was like thinking of, okay, like looking at what can we do to change the Westgate area. And, we brought, of course, asking let's look at moving the county governmental center there and looking at a rental car center and also an airport hotel. And, we asked the airport administration, FDO, to really go back and take a look at how do we change the airport to be a world-class airport. And whatever that we change, we would want to make sure that we're addressing traffic and transportation. And so to me, what Laura Beebe and her team brought to us is they brought a 5-year capital improvement plan. So now we can make decisions for now and the future. And also the airport, the airfield improvement, which is very important to Commissioner Weiss and the residents that are near the airport. And then you're bringing the rental car center with options to us. So in that way we can have a discussion and regarding the airport hotel. So I think that, you've exceeded I know my expectations in terms of what I wanted to see, and I wanted to see staff and for us to just think about the future. And this really does look at the future for Palm Beach County. And I just hope that, remember, I'm leaving in 6 months. So, I really hope that we can continue to think about, okay, how do we continue to move people and also transportation? How do we reduce traffic off of Belvedere? If the rental car centers, go into this place, now that's a potential for redevelopment of that area, the airport area. So there are really, huge implications in terms of what we're doing. But for me, what you've brought to us is a game changer. And, I want to thank you, staff, administration, for bringing something to us that, that we're part of the process and we're able to, help decide the future of Palm Beach County. So thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to echo pretty much what everyone's already said. I don't need to repeat it. First, though, thank you, Commissioner Bernard, for bringing this to them. And thank you guys for stepping up and delivering this. It's more than I could have imagined. I think you were already there with some of this, but this is really fantastic. And I think it's something that'll benefit this area. Belvedere, it's ripe for redevelopment, this whole area. I mean, this would be a game changer for all of this. And, for people who fly into PBI, I say it all the time, it's a destination airport. There's no connecting flights. No one's landing there and then leaving. They're coming here. And that whole area is the first leg of what they see of Palm Beach County. And, I think what you've brought to us is really, it'll be huge. Thank you, and thanks for starting this whole conversation.
Well, I want to thank all of you, too. Vision began here with County Commissioner Bernard, the idea of making this a world-class airport and revitalizing the area that it's been in. I think that with the dreams of everybody here, putting it together with the concrete that you have, your plans, and we had a very healthy discussion when we were in my office before this meeting. I think we talked about that rent-a-car facility, the valet parking, expansion of everything to make this a world-class airport because it's in a world-class county. And now we're coming up to speed. When you give those dates about 2030 and everything, it worries me a little bit. So I'm sure that maybe with all of us pulling forward on this, we can make it certainly in the lifetime of most of us, unless Commissioner Bernard wants to come back. We really appreciate all you have done, and we're looking forward to this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Bernard and everybody else. Okay, with that, we're going to move right into, without a break, if that's okay with everybody, move right into 4D, Government Center Renewal Replacement Project Overview. And I have a feeling that Ms. Collazo is going to stay right there in the front. And we have the rest of the staff, and we can move forward right into the last item. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Collazo. You may be recognized. Oh, she can handle it.
I'm getting company soon.
They're taking a flight. Go right ahead, you're recognized.
Okay, appreciate that. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. It's me, Ajala, Assistant County Administrator and Facilities Development and Operations Director. Joining me today is Eric McClellan, Director of FDO Strategic Planning Division. This workshop item seems to provide the board additional information regarding the Governmental Center Renewal Replacement Project. For context, during the January 23, 2024 board meeting, while addressing Commissioner comments as to the possibility of relocating the governmental center to the Westgate area, the board directed staff to provide a report on the status of the project. On February 1st of 2024, we sent the board the requested staff report. The same was thoroughly discussed during the February 2024 workshop meeting. At the time, staff was further directed to continue exploring options for a potential relocation of this facility and to return to the board at a later time once additional information had been gathered. As a result, this workshop item seeks to fulfill board direction while also requesting direction regarding whether or not to proceed with project implementation in its current version or a variation thereof. As we make our way through this presentation, we would like to note that in gathering information, we did not engage with consultants as to avoid any additional expenditures until a defined preferred path of action is identified by the board. Therefore, this presentation is entirely based on information that we had readily available. Our intent is nothing else but to define and refine a set of options for the board to consider in providing us direction. Although we know our board is familiar with the governmental center, a brief overview always comes handy. This 12-story facility comprises approximately 300,000 square feet for general government and constitutional officer operations. It was placed into service in 1984, and at the time, it accommodated approximately 500 employees from multiple general government agencies. In 2017, a project to renovate the facility was included in the infrastructure surtax approved project plan. This facility has been in continuous operations for approximately 4 years. In addressing the direction received from the board during the previously referenced February 2024 workshop meeting, we reached out to NETA Architects, the consultant retained to work on the design effort for the renovation project, and asked them to provide us the raw data that they had gathered through the programming effort. As we have shared with this board before, when staff was directed to explore options to relocate the governmental center, we directed NETA Architects to stop all work on the project. However, in preparing for this workshop, we felt we could benefit from the information they had already obtained. Using information provided by the consultant, this slide details the current occupants of the governmental center and their projected programming needs 20 years into the future. As can be seen, approximately 350,000 square feet will be required to accommodate all service providers. During the February workshop, we were directed to research options to relocate the tax collector's office and the property appraiser's office from the governmental center. Combined, the 20-year space needs for the two constitutional offices amount to approximately 114,000 square feet. Following prior board direction, the first option we considered to relocate the tax collector and the property appraiser were the county-owned properties in Westgate. However, we quickly discarded the same. As explained by the Director of Airports during the presentation that preceded us, vacant county-owned properties in the Westgate area are mostly under the control of the Department of Airports and have been retained for future airport uses, including, but not limited to, the relocation of the airport's maintenance compound. Converting airport property to general governmental purposes will require approval of the Federal Aviation Administration, a release from grant obligations, and require payment of fair market land value. Furthermore, approval will not be guaranteed. In researching other alternatives, the airport center complex came to mind. The complex is bordered on the east by I-95, on the south by Southern Boulevard, and on the north and west by Australian Avenue. It currently houses the county's Airport Center 1 building, shown on this slide in green, the Airport Center 2 building, shown on this slide in dark purple, as well as the Hilton Hotel, shown on this slide in yellow. The approved site plan for the Airport Center complex includes the entitlements required to build a 159,000 square feet county office building, which we commonly refer to as Airport Center 3, along with a 3-story parking garage, both of which are shown on this slide in red. Airport Center 3 is part of the county's long-term planning to provide for increased level of service, which is commensurate with population growth. Its construction was delayed in the aftermath of the 2008-2009 recession. Currently, Airport Center 3 is not included in the county's approved 5-year capital improvements program. A rough order of magnitude to develop Airport Center 3, using per unit costs developed by NETA for construction of the new governmental center facility, points to a present-day development cost of approximately $135 million. This is just a very preliminary estimate without the benefit of full design and does not consider future escalation. The board could consider approving development of Airport Center 3 in the near future in order to relocate the tax collector and the property appraiser operations from the governmental center. If additional departments are also relocated from this facility to maximize occupancy, potential programming of the new building could be as shown on this slide, or an equivalent combination of alternative programming identified as most preferred. Staff notes that the departments listed in this table tend to have less frequent engagement with the others that will remain as part of the governmental center programming and will therefore endure little to no operational impact by a work location remote from this facility. But then again, final decision-making on a tenant list will occur separate from today's direction. Now, please allow me to transition to Eric, who will take the lead in explaining the second alternative we consider.
Very good. Thank you so much. Go right ahead, sir. You're recognized.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. In February, the question was raised if general government and judicial programming could be combined onto Block D without the benefit of consultant services to graphically depict that potential concept and regulatory compliance. I'm going to walk you through a narrative approach. As we know today, the property supports surface parking for employees and public patrons. Redevelopment of the property will be subject to the City of West Palm Beach downtown master plan and urban regulations, the base limitations of which limit the site to 10 stories or 128 feet in height, whichever is more restrictive. Based upon the size of Block D, typical parking structure dimensions, and the floor heights of the Judge Daniel T.K. Hurley Courthouse across the street, we anticipate a 10-story building of 189 feet in height being necessary to accomplish the projected judicial space need alone, and that height being over 60 feet greater than base city regulations will allow. To resolve that conflict, staff previously proposed that the city convey to the county transfer of development rights, or TDRs, to exceed the permissible height as compensation for land elsewhere in the city that was conveyed by the county to the city. This was memorialized in an interlocal agreement approved by the board on September 15th of 2020, providing the equivalent of 110,000 square feet for county use on Block D at a permissible maximum height of 15 stories or 188 feet per city regulations using TDRs, whichever is more restrictive. And this height solves the projected need for the future judicial facility. Subsequently, on June 7th, 2022, the board approved the Judicial Facilities Master Plan update, which projects need for approximately 300,000 square feet of additional judicial space no later than year 2040, and assigns that to Block D for construction of a dedicated family and juvenile courthouse, along with space for judicial partners and the entirety of the public defender. A parking structure would also be needed to support operations. Combining that 300,000 square feet of programming with the 217,000 square feet of occupied space remaining at this building, as shown on this slide, the result is a programmatic need for approximately 517,000 square feet of building space, aside from a parking structure. Beyond the aforementioned height limitations of city regulations that are believed to accommodate the judicial programming alone, floor area ratio, or FAR, which is the amount of building space allowed on a site as a function of the site land area, is an additional layer of regulation that restricts site development intensity. Maximum allowable FAR ranges from a base of 2.75 up to 3.75 through use of transfer development rights. When applied to Block D, the resulting maximum square footage allowed calculates to 493,042 square feet of building area with the use of the TDRs, and that is a deficit of approximately 24,000 square feet based upon the county's projected programmatic needs. Although this is theoretical, absent any design, it does confirm that existing regulations preclude the combined programs from being permissible on Block D without regulatory change by the city. Once space for a parking structure, building setbacks at the property lines, building step backs as height increases, open space, and other regulations are applied, the end result is likely to be an even greater deficit than the FAR restrictions alone portray. If the board would like staff to further explore this Block D scenario, we would recommend 1, being authorized to retain design consultant services to model the resulting form of development in order to quantify the regulatory allowances that would be necessary to make this a viable site development program, and 2, being directed to approach the city for its input on the same. Staff would like to note that with a judicial need not projected to occur until sometime around 2040, this scenario would entail a premature capital investment and hence building area that would be subject to the effects of time, weather, and other physical conditions requiring upkeep and maintenance prior to commencement for its intended purpose. With that, Isami is now going to provide some financial details surrounding this scenario and complete staff's presentation.
Thank you, Eric.
Good, go right ahead, Ismi.
The new judicial facility is not included in the county's approved 5-year capital improvement program, since the need is beyond that planning horizon. We estimate that approximately $400 million will be needed in present-day dollars to deliver the entire judicial programming and related parking structure on Block D. Pursuing a combined facility on Block D will theoretically allow for disposition of the governmental center. Just for reference, the property appraiser's website leaves the appraised value of this building and property at approximately $65 million, which, based upon historical experience with government-owned tax-exempt real property, tends to carry an appraised value below the one attainable on open market. If the board wishes to further consider or explore this option, staff recommends it be authorized to appraise the governmental center as to provide a point of reference to develop a future funding plan. Back in February, we were asked if converting the governmental center to a judicial facility will be feasible. This approach will entail building a new governmental center on Block D and repurposing the existing facility for judicial programs and support services. We requested a preliminary feasibility statement from Neta Architects, the consultant for the renovation project, given that they have gained knowledge through structural and condition assessment efforts of the existing facility. That position statement was included as an attachment to the workshop item. In a nutshell, although deemed physically feasible, the level of renovation required to accommodate the judicial spaces will be significant, further increasing development costs and at the same time removing existing usable administrative office square footage to deliver those specialty spaces in accordance with conventional practice and design. If the board is interested in exploring this path, staff again recommends that it be authorized to retain consultant services to provide a formal and comprehensive feasibility analysis, including the resulting building square footage to fulfill the forecast needs and a rough cost estimate. Staff will again pursue input from court administration and the judicial partners as to any implications that repurposing this building will entail. This then brings us back to the original approach to this project, which is the renewal replacement option. As discussed during the February 2024 workshop meeting, all studies conducted to date confirm that the facility can be renovated at a lower cost than will be required to build a new one. As previously stated, potential programming for Airport Center 3, that is used as the basis for analysis, the remaining programming needs for the governmental center will equal approximately 217,000 square feet. This will allow for the facility to be renovated, the existing one, while providing growth capacity without the need to expand. Furthermore, it will eliminate the need for the approximately 31,000 square feet of lease space that we currently have to accommodate temporary operations. All of this is an immediate and future economic benefit to the county, while at the same time avoids additional capital expense that will result from any approach requiring a real estate transaction by leveraging county-owned real estate assets for years of service into the future. A quick overview of funding considerations help to highlight the fact that the governmental center renewal replacement project is the only one of the three alternatives considered that has an approved budget. Therefore, depending on the path elected by the board, staff will require board direction in order to return at a later time with a proposed funding plan reflective of that board direction to be provided. As we close on this presentation, we thought a matrix overview could prove a useful tool in the analysis. As previously stated, relocating the governmental center operations to the Westgate area was not considered due to county-owned real estate holdings in the area being slated for airport uses. If the board were to pursue construction of Airport Center 3, then as a joint requirement, it will need to pursue a combined facility on Block D or continue with the renewal replacement project. If the board were to pursue a combined facility on Block D, then construction of Airport Center 3 will be required. However, this option will allow for disposition of the current facility. If the board were to pursue conversion of the current facility to a judicial facility, then Airport Center 3 and construction of the governmental center on Block D will both likely be needed. However, this option will likely carry increased costs due to challenges associated with converting the existing facility into a judicial facility. If the board were to pursue renovation of the existing building, along with construction of Airport Center 3, it will secure room for growth without having to increase the need for lease space to accommodate temporary relocations while construction is underway. On a closing note, we have been asked if retaining the existing building in its current condition is an option. The return on county's investment being the main concept at hand. Although it is certainly an option, it's not one that we will recommend. The current building is about 40 years old, which is at a point where return on past investment has largely been realized in full, and diminishing returns will now result. For example, in the past 3 fiscal years, the county has spent about $2 million annually in base maintenance to keep the building operational. This figure does not account for renovation projects. As the building continues to age, the cost to maintain it will only continue to increase, and our ability to complete repairs will decrease as components and systems become obsolete or unavailable. That can lead to impact on continuity of operations, which is certainly something we always try to avoid, be it on the private or public sector. Furthermore, without the renovation project or an alternative thereof to recapture the space that we have within this building that is not most efficiently being used, the current building will be unable to accommodate growth into the future. Therefore, that means that there will come a time where additional space will be required and a means to deliver the same will need to be identified. All that said, staff is requesting board direction if to proceed with the governmental center renewal replacement project as currently approved, or if to pursue a different path as per board direction to be provided. This concludes staff presentation, and as usual, we will take any questions as this board deems appropriate.
We all want to talk.
Who is first? Who is first? Thank you so much. That was very comprehensive. A little contest here to my left. I would say that ladies are first. Commissioner Woodward, you go ahead first, and then Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you, even though he did beat me to the draw. Thank you. A quick question. Before, when we were discussing the government center, it was also for expansion, which was going above the 6 stories. We had a price for that expansion and square footage. Do you have that?
It was 2 additional floors, the possibility of expanding to 340,000 square feet. And it was close to $160 million. Sounds about right. Exactly.
So an additional 32 million, and that would have only added
40,000
square feet? Okay, go ahead.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you very much for that comprehensive, very comprehensive description. So here's my feelings on it. Based on everything you shared with us today and in previous discussions, I would suggest would like to pursue staying the course with the renewal and replacement of this building and building Airport Center 3 to provide a place for the tax collector and the property appraiser, and more importantly for the people that utilize those services to be able to not have to come as far downtown. And then the last thing I'd like to talk about, is our courthouse. And I don't believe that's on the National Historic Register. Can you guys find out if, I'd like to see the old courthouse,
Oh, the old
the
one.
historic courthouse.
I think
Allow us to circle back if it is not a problem, Commissioner. I cannot answer with certainty if it is in the registry. We know for sure that we have received funds to restore it to a historical condition, right? But let us circle back if that is
I'd like
acceptable.
to make sure that the community has spent a lot for that to make sure it stays preserved as well. So I know we're good stewards, but we're not going to be here forever. So they say.
Vice Mayor Marino.
Thank you. I agree with Commissioner Weiss. And I think, oh, Ann Gannon left. She was here a
No,
moment ago.
it's okay. It should be-
I think the advantage to having the tax collector and the property appraiser off-site is much more than we can ever say. One, it helps with transportation downtown, and we're always talking about transportation and the ease of getting down here. Parking will be so much easier for anybody going to those locations. The fact that we already have a site plan there, how fast could we build the building?
We could proceed following this board's approval with procuring design services, which we don't have right now. Do that procurement. As we're doing that, we will work with OFMB to secure funding for the project. I will estimate about a year and a half for procurement and then design, another 6 months for permitting, and I'm being conservative, and then about 18 months, 24 months for construction. So overview,
years.
say 4 years and a half.
So 4 years to move those offices. What does that do to how we renovate in this building?
We are at the very early phase still of design. We have not pursued construction drawings, design development, none of that. So we still have ahead of us about a year of design easily, plus permitting. And then we had ambition to do this in a phased approach, right? So the two projects will be basically following one another, coming close. AC3 will be completed before this one is, without doubts, due to, based on the magnitude of the effort.
Now, we have 31,000 feet of leased space. How long do we have that for?
We did an extended term. First term is 5 years, is coming to a close, with an option to renew. So for another additional 5, if my memory serves me well. So we are precisely at that intersection where a decision should be made.
And do we have any ability to, do we need to put any court space in this building temporarily? Like
That's
on the first floor?
That's a conversation that we will need to have with the court administration and the judicial partners, and we're more than happy to pursue that exchange.
And, sorry, this book's really big. Your staff report that you did, oh my God, I don't even know when you gave it to us. But it also says in here that the, sorry, I'm too far away from the microphone. The clerk, all except for finances, could be in the court building. But since we're not talking about doing that for 20 years, is that right?
So they are currently in the court facility. We do have finance in this building, a portion of, and admin services. Block D will house judicial courtrooms, obviously, and the public defender. So family courtrooms as well.
Okay. All right. I'll come back. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Baxter and then Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you, Mayor and Assemi. I do support the Airport Center 3. I do have several questions. You had given the figure, and forgive me, I didn't actually mark the page. Oh, it looks like it is page 24, that the new judicial facility would be approximately $400 million. And then in a previous page, you had said it would be roughly 300,000 square feet. My concern is that when asking people who build buildings, industry, the going fees can range between $400 a square foot and $450 a square foot. And when I do your calculation, we're at over $1,300 a square foot. That's a bigger concern. I do understand government facilities have higher regulations, and that was taken into account when these numbers were given. And I asked, and I said specifically for So I guess whatever we decide today, I would love to see a breakdown of how you came up with that number. Please let me finish. And then also, if we do move and proceed with Airport Center 3, I still would like to, for the residents downtown, to have some sort of satellite facility. It doesn't have to be to the level it is now, obviously. But I think a lot of people down here who choose not to use cars, and we're trying to promote less cars on the road, may like having a place they can walk to or take local transportation to as just a you get what I'm saying. It doesn't have to be full services. We can still allow Ms. Gannon, and I do know that Dorothy Jackson is hugely in support of having their main facility off-site, but I don't want to leave our residents here without also. So I would like to keep that in mind, proceeding forward with whichever direction we go. I do know the longer we wait, the more costs go up. We're not going to need the facility, the judicial expansion you said till 2040. Did you happen to explore the idea, because we lease land, and to the airport workshop that we just had, said we make the most amount of money there leasing land. Did you calculate that into if we did move to another facility, and then this potentially being left making money off of this land being leased if we built another building next door?
So let's tackle one question at a time, if that is okay. Let me start with the cost of judicial facilities, and I'm going to request Eric's assistance on this one, but we'll like to give you the broad response. Judicial facilities and detention facilities might be the two most costly type of facilities that we built. Different from a general government facility. In a judicial facility, you do need to provide specialized systems, such as secure corridors, separate elevators to transport inmates aside from the public, right? So there comes a level of hardening that is not typical of a government facility, and hence the increased cost and estimate that we have. Now, I'm going to caveat that estimate with, we have not designed the facility, right? So what we have is the square footage need and projection based on per unit costs that have been developed through the years. And with that, Eric?
Sure. So I think one fundamental difference between the public sector, when we give you a project estimate or a budget, and the private sector, we're talking all-in dollars. We're talking design, permitting, construction, furniture, staff cost, you name it. A lot of times when you talk to a contractor, they're just going to give you the construction cost. They don't have all those other inputs to give you. And I would also say that, as Ismi said, courts and detention are the two most expensive facilities that we construct. If you think about the level of electronics and security that goes into those particular facilities, that commands a premium. So it's a much higher cost.
On that thought, Eric, so if it was just a government facility, how much would it cost?
Current marketplace, previously we probably would have used $350 to $400 a square foot. Based upon inflation we've seen in the last few years, I would say we're probably somewhere around $600, $700 a square foot. Another driving cost for the judicial program, that cost also factors in a structured parking facility on that block. That's about $35,000 per parking space, and for a facility of that size, you have a lot of parking. Structured parking is always a huge cost driver when it's involved.
And to that point, one of the things I thought this solved was having more parking for our residents to come downtown. Now, I do understand we may free some up moving the tax collector and the property appraiser off-site, but still, are we enough, right? Like, how many employees, and then are we restructuring our current garage to help with that?
That will certainly be an option if property appraiser and tax collector move into a new facility. And going back to the comment regarding per square foot cost, I'm going back to the agenda item we brought back in February from Netta Architects, from the consultant, not staff. The cost per square foot for new construction was $580 plus $40 additional for FF&E. And I think that ties back to the comment that Eric made. When we provide numbers, they need to be fully burdened, every cost included. So that's why our numbers might be on the higher end.
I just know we don't need the judicial facility, leaving this a potential lease, which could be reoccurring dollars. I hesitate to rehab a 40-year-old building because we have seen time and time again, those costs add up, but it's not, okay, here it is all at once, we can properly plan for it. It's a slow pain over a long period of time, and I truly believe that none of us will be up here by the time it's done. So this isn't for us, this is future thinking for taxpayers and services. And even if we're building on top of, I'm sure engineers are amazing, and I'm sure all the people in the world can study something, but adding that square footage on top of a 40-year-old structure, I just hesitate for, that seems scary to me, especially after the building collapsing down south, and so many things could, sorry, I'm not, these are things that I worry about when rehabbing a 40-year-old building. I don't want to save $1 today or say this is the more cost-effective way and end up hurting long-term. That is where I guess my concern is, because, you know, we are where we are. I think hurricane codes, building codes have changed drastically in the last 40 years. I think they were the most substantive changes in '93 during Andrew, or after Andrew, excuse me. This building was before then, was it not?
84, yes.
And so there's my concerns, right? Like, so we have a stronger building code and all the rehabbing in the world. Are we grandfathered in, or are we going to match all those codes and bring the garage up to speed for our ADA population that has to go down an elevator and across the long walkway and walk up? I mean, are we addressing that in this rehab?
So, couple comments to that question, and if you don't mind, Commissioner, I would like to go back to one question that I don't want to leave unanswered. You asked, have we looked into the possibility of leasing space, right? We have not done that because we're waiting direction, right? But if we are directed to do so, we will retain appraisal services and get an idea of what we could do from the funding perspective. So with that question answered,
Hold on one sec, Freeman, and I want to be very clear, not us being landlords leasing this building. Like, I'm talking just like, it, you know, if it's the airport or wherever, like, I don't know if that's a land lease and then having somebody else do the building.
in the facility, without doubts. One of the things, after the February workshop, we were basically told to continue the conversation, right? So we had some level of limitations to what we could engage and pursue. So we tried to be as careful and respectful as possible, right? We didn't want to go down a path that was not the one that the board wanted us to do, and that's why we didn't engage with consultants, right? To evaluate that possibility, our recommendation will be, let us retain consultant services, let us get an appraisal of what fee simple disposition will be and what a ground lease will entail, which is the question you're answering, right? But if we're going to retain appraisal services, our recommendation will be, let's appraise both. That way, you get a full picture of what your options are. Going back to the question regarding structural integrity of the building, that was the first stop we made, right? The first stop we did in reviewing if this building could be renovated or not was to task the consultant firm with evaluating the structural integrity of the building and what needed to be done to ensure that it could continue to carry operations into the future. There is a structural engineering firm that signed and sealed that report. It's not my signature, it's not my seal, certifying that the building was in and remains in good condition, that there are some areas that require to be hardened, but that with those provisions being put in place, it could continue to provide services into the future. So other than conveying and sharing what the report says under the professional responsibility of those colleagues that did the analysis and certified, I cannot elaborate more, right? I can tell you that our reports and files say, as of today, it is doable, it is in good condition, it will meet structural requirements.
Now, meeting structural requirements, does it also make it as, let's say, hurricane resistant? We're pretty close. And how will our insurance rates be affected versus new versus remodeling this?
I cannot answer the question regarding insurance rate. I can circle back with that answer after connecting with the Director of Risk Management. As it relates to design, that's precisely, and structural integrity, that's precisely what the design team is certifying when they put the documents together and able to meet code requirements.
Ms. Baker would like to say something at this point. You're recognized.
Commission, when you get over a certain threshold, which we will definitely pass if we renovate this building, we will have to build to the current code that's in place. And so that will help, that should help with our premiums, but all premiums have gone up even on brand-new structures. But it would assist as opposed to where we are today. So we would definitely have to build to the current code whenever that is. And so codes are constantly revised and changed. So where we are today, if we were building today, 5-6 years from now when we go to build, it may be something totally different, but it'll be to the standards in which the state has adopted. So I believe that if we renovated this building, we would definitely see a savings if we did not when it comes to rate increases. The insurance, you ask about insurance. And so if we renovate, we'll definitely have to renovate the code, resulting in a savings, because they need to look at the building pretty much as a new building because it's renovated. And we still have to meet standards.
But I guess there's my question, like, can we get information regarding if we because that's not how it works. Listen, I understand government's different, but that isn't how it works in the private sector. It doesn't matter how many times you renovate your home, they are gonna keep it they look at the year it was built. And so I am curious, how would those rates be different, new building versus this building? I am curious, how much money could we make off of a ground lease? And what would the new rates be if we just built a government center, leased this out, and left it for the future judicial growth? Now, if nobody else wants that information and they're like, okay, we're just proceeding forward, okay, but I think I just want to do my part in expressing that I have some serious concerns and change orders and things taking a lot longer and not properly preparing. I mean, how much longer are we expecting after this renovation to get out of this building?
We are, but we purchase umbrella insurance.
How many more years after renovating are we expecting to get out of the use of this building?
It was another 20-year life cycle, exactly.
Which is half the time, I would say half the time of what we're currently in. And it was costing how much to renovate this building?
$126 million without an expansion.
So if we did your math of $580 a square foot for 300 square feet, how much is that? 300,000 square feet.
We brought that estimate for building new, and all costs included was around $60 million, sorry, $260 million.
And so, again, if we're looking at those numbers, and this is like half of it, but we're also only getting half the time, and 20 years, then it's going to be another board's like starting all over in 20 years. Again, I just want to be better prepared for the future, and that it just looking at today's numbers and going, you know what, it's the cheapest possible thing, but I think we all know properly planning actually saves better money, and it's going to cost less today to build a 40-year building than it will in 20 years, or however that looks. I mean, those are just things I'm putting out there. Listen, I would like the board to consider that 20 years at 126 million, versus, what was it, 360 for another 40 years? And, they don't have to do this all over again. But I'd love to hear what they have to say.
Commissioner Bernard, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Isme, you had mentioned, I guess, if we do the improvements, it would give us an additional 20 years, and there's nothing else that we can do to increase the useful life at all?
Maintenance, as we do on a routine basis, helps to extend the useful life of any building, any facility, right? And I think that applies to many other things we maintain constantly. That is the projection based on design considerations, right? It doesn't preclude the fact that we have many buildings that we have continued to maintain into longer terms, right? So, but current documentation coming from the consultant, that's the planning horizon that we have been dealing with.
Okay. I know for me, I support for us to renew and replace this building right now. I don't think we should do nothing. You know, if, like as me said, it's going to cost us about, what, $2 million for maintenance. And so we need to do the renewal and replacement. You know, I haven't had a chance to hear from the property appraiser and the tax collector regarding the airport center. But I do like the idea of moving to the airport center on Southern, and I'd love to hear from them to have them weigh in. But I like the idea. And then finally, you know, the only thing is, it's just that what I'm hoping that whatever that we do decide, we do proceed with moving forward and just find a way to move a little bit quicker to get this done. You know, I know in other states, you know, they move a little bit quicker, and ours take a little bit of time. There are reasons why, but whatever that we decide today or whatever, I'd like for us to at least, if we made the decision, let's move forward and let's get it designed, let's get it built, so in that way we can make things happen. Thank you.
Okay,
If
thank you,
I
Commissioner.
May?
Pardon me?
May,
No.
if I may?
Yeah, of course you may. It's a
Sure, with the
workshop.
commissioner. We have the signed contract and construction manager at risk contracts in place for the renovation project. So that will allow us basically to tell them they can restart working on the project. That will be immediate. As it relates for Airport Center 3, we already have a site plan approved. So we will immediately move to procuring the signed services. And while we do that, we will work with OFMB, if that is this board's direction, to come back with a funding plan to be able to move the project forward.
Follow up, Madam Mayor.
Go right ahead, Commissioner.
If there's a decision to move both the property appraiser and tax collector, can we phase the sections that they're in as the first ones that gets renovated? So in that way, you know, as they move, then that can be the first projects that are done.
Certainly, and we will work with the design team to make that happen and coordinate both projects.
Okay,
Before
thank
we
you.
make that decision final, I would like to hear from the two heads of those departments. And before we do, Commissioner Woodward, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. So, sorry. First question, the Airport Center 3 preliminary price, I know that you gave us, that includes the structured parking that would go along with that site?
We use, for consistency, exactly the same unit prices that were used for this building as provided by the consultant, and we included the structured parking as well.
And for that location, we're the permitting agency, yes?
It
That's
is
not City of West Palm?
unincorporated, correct, yes.
So that could expedite the process because it's us?
That means I will be calling Whitney a whole lot.
So that's our people.
That's our
Okay,
people,
That's our
right.
people.
That's
Just
Good
putting them on
point.
notice now.
point.
And so if we move several departments to the airport, I know part of the discussion with the consultants when they checked the structure of this building was even to do the expansion of the 2 stories. But if we relocate these departments there, we don't need that expansion. Would that even give us a little more lifespan on this building compared to what they were viewing it?
Certainly, I think it gives the board, number one, you can't forego the need to expand, right? Because you're going to get back 80,000, approximately 80,000 square feet in this building that can be reprogrammed. It gives you additional flexibility to carry out the phasing construction. I think it gives you an ability to minimize impacts as well, because now you have more vacant space, right? So we can phase more effectively and then move the project along more effectively as well. So there are certainly benefits.
And not doing the expansion would also any construction is going to kind of move the building, but not doing that would potentially lessen the impact?
I will certainly agree that it will lessen the impact on the structure and the structural requirements.
And one last thing, as far as the question on, insurance that we have to do, as I understand it, and if I think I need some clarification, we have an umbrella policy that's like all of our structures, all of our buildings go under one policy. So how does this building, how much effect does each building necessarily have on our overall policy? If anyone, I'd just like to know. Yeah, how many structures, how does this whole big policy, because it's not like a regular policy, this is different.
Yeah, I cannot answer the question regarding risk management. I can gather the information unless Administrator Baker can assist me here. As to how many buildings we have, we usually run with the number of approximately 814 million square feet. So we do have a large portfolio of county facilities, large and small. Not that we don't have 800 governmental center facilities, but we do have a significant number of facilities throughout.
Well, I don't think you could really divide square footage by the amount that we pay. I think that there's a lot more variables involved in that, and that we would need risk management. Ms. Baker, do you have something to say about that?
I have a response from my risk manager.
Oh, excellent. This is good,
Our
right? This is good.
insurance.
This is important.
He's saying that to follow up on a question regarding renovation versus new construction to governmental center, I work with our contracted insurance broker to determine the most accurate response, understanding there are significant variables. When a renovated building includes an updated roof, which we're getting, and hurricane impact windows, it would most likely be considered the same as new construction from a rating perspective. However, since we are in a master combined program, which takes into account nearly 14 million square feet, we are largely insulated from an individual building driving additional insurance premiums. And that's from Scott Marting, our insurance
That's pretty much up to date.
director.
Just now. Okay, very, very good. You're done. Okay. We have, thank you, Ms. Baker. We have the Vice Mayor and then Commissioner Bernard. Then I'd like to hear Ms. Gannon and would you both like to say something? I know you've been sitting here enjoying this, but as you come up, I'd like to recognize the Vice Mayor.
So just to clarify, because I heard two different numbers. The county has, I thought you said 800 million square feet.
No.
No.
800 facilities, 14 million square feet.
Those combined together, I didn't hear the middle word. Okay. So when
I
you said that
apologize
and you
if I
said 14
didn't
million, I'm like, wait a second,
enunciate.
I didn't not hear this properly. Thank you for the clarification. We have 800 buildings, approximately close to 14 million.
14.
And we own close to 20, I think, Dorothy, you can,
26.
2,700 parcels or something of
is
that
correct.
nature? Yeah, okay. We have a lot of property.
That's
We do.
taxable. That's taxable. All right, Commissioner Bernard, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. It's me, as we're discussing the Airport Center 3, since we've had a discussion regarding career source, I'd love if we can give directions to speak with Julie Datalo from the Career Source to see, if moving to that Airport Center would be okay with them.
Would you do that, Ms. Colazzo? Of course. Okay?
Of
Would
course.
you also let us know her statement, and her statement can be sent to all of us. Vice Mayor?
Can I have a follow-up on that? Because I
Sure, go
actually
ahead.
had the same thought, but if we do that for Career Source, do we need to open that up to other nonprofits? So I don't want to, I
Career
don't,
Source, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't think it's a nonprofit. I think it's a government agency, Career Source.
what would be the clarification, Ms. Baker?
Give us an opportunity to look at it. We will work with them. They're our partners. We work with them on other issues. So give us an opportunity to kind of look at what we've got and how we can possibly assist them.
Okay, clarify when you say partner.
We have a number of partners, and we have not-for-profits and others that are looking for space. One is our legislators, congressional people that you gave us direction to kind of work through, and we've got other entities. So give us an opportunity to look at it and come back to you with some options for you to consider. We need them. We want to partner with them, and I don't want to set a precedent that we can't live with.
That's
Thank
very
you.
good. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Ms. Gannon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Is this on? I don't know. I'm on. Okay, good. I'm glad. The conversation's been very interesting, and one of the issues that I need to share with you is that if our office moves, then we're required to have a driving range, which is an additional 125 feet by 75 feet with a fence around it. And we now have little shacks outside for our employees to be in. And these facilities go with all of the driver's license functions in the state now. So,
You're giving us your qualifications to move, is that?
pardon me?
Are you giving us the requirements?
Yes,
For your
I am.
office if you
But that,
move?
and we did not mention that previously, and I spoke with or emailed SMA yesterday or the day before and shared that with her, and not sure that that piece of property can accommodate that,
Okay.
that driving range.
Well, since you just received it yesterday, why don't we review this a little more, because that is rather important, if that's a requirement. You're smiling,
Yeah,
Ms. Colasso,
we-
tell us.
So certainly, we communicated, the tax collector, Gannon, and I communicated yesterday via an email, and based on the information received, very, very preliminary review, we were having a conversation internally, and we think we can work with the design team to accommodate that. Worst case scenario, we will have some surface parking spaces displaced, but we think we can capture those in the parking garage by adjusting what has been included at site plan level. So we will appreciate the opportunity to work with your
Good.
office and make sure we can accommodate that requirement.
Pardon me?
No, driving tests,
It's where
driving
you,
tests.
driving test. We
Yes.
call it a range. I don't know
Driving
what
test.
it is.
No, I knew it was a driving test, but you know.
It's a driving
You could always
test.
use the airport to drive the cars
Actually,
around.
no, we're not
I'm
doing that.
sure.
That's a safety issue.
The hour is late, so anybody who's watching, we get
It
very
is.
good. So we've got a little bit of review to do. And Ms. Gannon, will you work closely with Ms. Colazzo when it comes to the requirements for your office? Because I know they're state mandated as well.
Well, actually, we'd like to give you our recommendation that we know what we need. We're experts at creating these offices. We can build an office in 2.5 years.
What do you use for construction?
Morganti.
Okay.
Yes, and we've used the same footprint, the same architect because of that, because we needed to get these up and going as quickly as possible for, not just for our employees, but for the public.
For the public, sure,
For the
absolutely.
public. So it's not like you're going to be inventing the wheel. We can tell you how to plan it. Our IT people can do it. We know what we need. We do need a facility that has our store on the ground floor, meaning where the public facing part where people come in. Elderly people do not like taking elevators. They're very fearful of that kind of thing, and we get a lot of elderly people in our offices every day throughout our system. And understand that in our system every day, we serve about 3,600 clients every single day.
In all your facilities?
No, it's countywide in the 6 facilities that we
There's
have.
6 facilities.
Yes.
I
So, and currently now, the driving tests that are taken are referred to our other branches, which are always backed up. And it's very difficult because there's only so much time to be able to do driving tests in our system. So, accessing a new driving range would be very helpful to us and would help our system
Very good.
accommodate other people.
Commissioner Baxter, do you have a question for Ms.
Yes, I
Gannon?
do.
Sure, stay right there.
Hi. Thank you for coming. Thanks for joining
Oh,
us.
you're welcome.
2 questions. You said that you guys have a design already ready to go, but what we've discussed is putting yourself and the property appraiser at the same property. Would that design accommodate for that?
No, it would not.
Okay.
But I believe that this is more than a 1-story facility, so
It is.
We have all of our administrative offices, our IT department, our tax services department on the 3rd floor.
Okay, so hold on. Are we talking about the property at the airport that is completely empty, or are we talking about the Career Source building and redoing it? What are we, because I'm trying to,
I believe it's empty.
We're talking about Airport Center Complex. That's the area where we currently have Airport Center 1 and 2 and the Airport Hilton Hotel. There is a portion of that site
That's right.
that is vacant. So that area, stay on the prior one, to your right on the northwest, that vacant area is where Airport Center 3 will be built.
and that's what I thought we were talking about.
Exactly.
Right.
And so it would be, Ms. Gannon, a brand-new building.
That's correct.
And so what I'm asking, because you said you have this design, and then you said 2 stories is already there, are you saying,
Oh, no, I was asking if, to accommodate both of our offices, if there was going to be more than 1 story, which I assumed there would be.
okay, that makes sense. I just didn't know how that affected your design plans. And then how would you feel if moving your main facility over there, if it can accommodate the drive? Sorry,
course, if that's right.
the drive-
Yes.
driving range.
Drive course.
Sorry. How would you feel about, and I mentioned it earlier, but I don't know that you were in here, having downtown still having like, not driving, but a satellite facility, maybe renewal of licenses or tax receipts or
I would not encourage that.
not anything for the
No,
people downtown?
I would not encourage that. First of all, it's very costly. If this office is not busy, then I have employees who are not working, which is why we've centralized all of our operations into different areas of the county to be more efficient. We track and monitor every single person that comes in our building or calls us. If you call me and say your sister came in and she didn't get good treatment, I can pull her phone call up, and then I can have a chat with my staff. And that's what we've set up to do to be able to offer excellent service in this county to all of our constituents.
So not even minimal services, you'd want
No,
nothing?
but
Okay.
we are beginning to, also, we have 6 kiosks in our county right now at Publix and another facility where you can actually renew your title,
So kiosks,
a kiosk.
nice, all right.
It actually works very well, and people like it. They can go to the grocery. It's a lost leader for the grocery store.
And just because you had mentioned kiosk, and it reminded me, I do know that the Royal Palm Beach, the mayor had
Yes, we know.
mentioned. Okay, you are aware
Yes,
of getting a
I have
kiosk.
met with them many times and explained to them, they're not very far from our new office, that I can't pull 4 people out and put them in a small facility. It's not cost effective.
Do the kiosks have people?
No.
I guess what I'm asking, is it possible to get a kiosk?
We actually have a contract with another corporation for these, and we were allocated so many of them based on the state, not us. And then they looked at the facilities and the number of people in Publix and how it would be used. And we've already moved 2 of those kiosks because there wasn't enough business. We're not just like going into the community and say, hey, I need a kiosk here. You have to be able to justify it.
Maybe further discussion another day, if you don't mind.
we could do that.
Thank you.
We'll save the kiosk question till later.
Go
Commissioner
to Publix.
Is that next to the lottery kiosk?
No, it's not.
It's all right, it's all right.
And-
Commissioner Bernard and then the Vice Mayor.
And thank you for being here. Just a quick question, just for the constituents, for the residents, would moving to, if you're on Southern and near the I-95, would that be a better location than here for you?
Yes, it would be. There would not be a parking issue, and there's a huge parking issue in this city.
And would that be better for the residents?
Yes, it
Thank
would
you.
be.
Thank you very much.
All right, Vice Mayor Marino.
Thank you. So the building that we're proposing to build is 130,000 square feet?
159,
159, okay, so it's the 127 plus the 31, okay.
Exactly.
And we have a combination of 6 different offices right now. So while we would love to be able to build to your specs, I think we're going to be building something that's going to incorporate your offices, Dorothy's offices, Miss Jack's, pardon me, and for other opportunities, and if need be, with the extra 30,000 plus or minus square feet, maybe some other offices too. So I know that you can submit your, obviously, the two of you would be working hand in hand with the design of the building because of what your needs are, and you know what your needs are. So I think the building itself is something that's really necessary, and I look forward to hearing what Dorothy has to say. Thank you. Thanks, Ann.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you.
Ms. Gannon, you're not done yet.
Oh.
Since you keep such good records, could you submit to Ms. Collazo's office the number of people that your facilities take care of throughout the county?
Yes.
I know you have needs in the western communities, the Ag Reserve, and if you have kiosks throughout the county, it would be very helpful to us to know where to build a facility that would be suited to your county's needs. So we're going to need those statistics so that we know exactly if we need to put a small satellite office here, and one in the Ag Reserve, and certainly a large office in what we're proposing today. If you could submit that at your next week or two, that'd be helpful.
I will share with you, Commissioner, we have done some of those studies, and they're called, and I'm trying to think of what they're called, where you go in and do circles around communities to see where people that's it, heat maps, where you go in and do studies. And what we found out is that just because you live in Boca doesn't mean you go to Delray. You probably could end up in North County. There's really no rhyme or reason to where people end up in our offices.
But
we
you know
can do
where
that.
they are. You know how many people you take care of
Right.
in each of your facilities, such as your facility over at Congress. So if you could let us know where people go to get your services, it would better assist us in knowing where to locate your offices.
Well, I will share with you that we just purchased 5 acres of land on Lyons Road, as you know, and we are closing our Congress Avenue. And we did do a heat map. Our population in South County is not east of 95 anymore. It's actually west, and I believe that's your district. That building, we are closing on it in August of this year, and the planning will be completed, and we will start construction immediately. And within 2.5 years, you will have a new building.
Well, the nice thing about that is no construction will occur on Lyons Road unless it's completed.
That part's
So I
completed.
look forward to that because there's pretty hot out there.
Well,
And
I
I
made
look forward
sure
to your
that
facility.
we're in the area that's completed because I
Good.
knew of your concerns.
Thank you, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Ms. Gannon. No other questions? All right,
Madam Mayor,
thank you.
Madam Mayor, real quick.
Yes.
Just, Isme, is there a way to, as we're designing the building, the space that the tax collector needs, is there a way for us to make sure that it is designed to her specification?
Without doubts, and if I may share with this board, when we engage with all our stakeholders, but tax collector office included, we had a meeting for this renovation project with tax collector Gannon. She asked and brought to the table the design firm she currently uses, so we actually put together the 2 design firms. That's the level of collaboration that we were trying to do. So to answer your question directly, yes, without doubts.
Perfect. Yeah, I just hope that, as we're designing the Airport Center 3, that, she's able to work with her design firm, so in that way to make sure it flows. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you,
Are there
Ms.
any other
Gannon.
questions?
We
No.
might have more later. We'll let you know.
Well, just call me.
Thank you. All right. Good evening, Ms.
Good evening. I know you all are tired, and I won't take much of your time, but Ismi and I have been in good contact. She did share with me this idea for the Airport Center 3, and I am just fine with that move if that is what you wish to do. I think the location is perfect in many ways. It's very central. If I was going to suggest anything, it might be build big, because other people will want to come be there too. But no, I do think it's going to be just fine, and we're happy to co-locate with the tax collector. As you know, we work well together a lot, so we're happy to work together with them. Of course, public-facing efforts are nowhere near as large as hers. We do much of our work online now. Homestead filings, which is our biggest activity in person, is down to about 40% of the applicants have to come in. That's only because they choose to. All the rest are filing online. So again, ours is really more about certainly having a public face. We want to have a public face in the middle of the county and somewhere convenient with lots of good parking, et cetera, et cetera. But for me, it's more important that we get our staff somewhere a little more convenient for them. I will mention that again, as we go along, we'll work with ISME on whatever we need to get her further beyond what we've already given her, because of course we've all been through this. This is kind of nice. We've already done the planning because we were going to do this building. The other thing I'd mention is that our biggest need, honestly, for space in this county is in the South County. Our office on in Delray on West Atlantic, we co-share a space in the old library across from Kings Point. It is woefully small for what we need. ISME is working with us at the moment on rejiggering the space a little bit to try to get us just 2 or 3 more staff in there. But it's not lost on any of us that the growth in this county is happening right there. And the population in that part of the county want to come in. They are not as comfortable using our online tools. It's a nice day's outing to come into the property appraiser and experience some of our excellent customer service.
That's good coffee.
So I will, yes, exactly. So I will just say that is, if we need something, we need a bigger space at the in the South County, in the western South County, if possible.
I invite you to contact my office and let's talk. Mm-hmm. I'll be out there at the end of this week, meeting with the developers on Atlantic at 441 Atlantic and Jog, and also the FDOT will be joining me there. They're taking a lot of space across from Kings Point on Atlantic, military. So, and Ms. Gannon, maybe we'll go out there and I'll chat about it and make sure that you have appropriate space there.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And I don't want to keep you any longer. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I know you're probably all tired.
Thank you. We know how to contact you if we have
absolutely.
Any questions.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay, my colleagues, we have no cards, and I think that we have a non-speaking card that will be filed. We don't need to build any. And I think we're set in terms of any comments. I just want to thank you, your staff, Ms. Colazo. You've done an amazing job, but you have a big job ahead of you. So whatever we can do to assist you. And I would like to remind everybody before you pack up too quickly that we do have comments.
Is she missing?
I just want to reconfirm direction, Mayor, if you don't mind, just to make sure I'm moving in the right direction.
I hesitate in terms of my giving you direction because I've learned new things here today that I am, at least for me personally, there's 6 other commissioners. But I hesitate to give any direction until I review some of the issues that were brought by our 2 partners here. But I'll open the board and hear from my colleagues. Vice Mayor Marino, your light was on first.
Thank you. I will say, if it were me getting board direction, I would agree that we should be doing the airport center building. and renovating this building, and I see the advantages to doing that because not having to go up over the 6th story, not having to close in the atrium, being able to use the property appraiser and the tax collector as staging areas for the improvements. I believe that to be a win-win. And in 20 years, when we're dealing with the courthouse, maybe we do, in fact, look at that space for the governmental center over there, and we have a perfectly outfitted building that we can dispose of or sell the land and let the commissioners in 20 years figure out what they want to do with that. Thank you.
Commissioner Bernard, you're recognized.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I know I brought this up in terms of the brain freezing exercise to look at, moving the county governmental center. And, based on the discussions that we've had, I think that we should stay the course, do the renewal and replacement, don't add the 2 floors, and really move as expeditiously as possible to get the plans drawn, get it built, and then also work on the airport center, working with the property appraiser, tax collector, and so we can address the needs of our residents. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. I would agree with my fellow commissioners that moving forward with Airport Center 3 and the relocation of however many departments to come out of this building to go there, working with them obviously to make sure that especially the public-facing part is what they need, and not golf, but a driving course range. I really thought she meant golf, I'm sorry. And then also with this building, moving forward with just the renovation that without the additional floors or closing the atrium, so it's minimal damage to the building and, would give us what we need. And I agree, who knows what this whole place looks like in 20 years and how much space we need. We may need a lot less depending on AI, who knows? Or maybe
Definitely.
we need more that's got more computer, we'll see. But that's in the future, and for right now, I think that we should definitely move forward with this.
Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you, Mayor. And make it the 4th time you've heard this. Move forward. You've got your contracts ready to go. Move on them. And then also moving on, Airport Center 3.
Commissioner Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. Hearing the board, I'll reiterate, I do support Airport 3, renovating the building minus the atrium, and but I want to emphasize one thing that was said. Please expedite this, like yesterday. If this is a decision the board all wants to move forward, can we just get it done? Please. Thank you.
If I may say, again, thank you, Ms. Colazo and your staff. With regard to expediting things, maybe you could give us all sort of an update in, what would you say, 8 weeks as to things are progressing? Would that be all right? 8 weeks?
Yes, it is.
To let us all know how you're doing with that. And my concern is this. I agree with everybody about where it should move. I have seen buildings in Silicon Valley that were huge and beautiful and that are now empty because of IT. And we have new artificial intelligence that's coming into play. I know that in my district, folks are probably not using those technologies, but 10, 15 years as we see new families come in, I think that government buildings will shrink and businesses, maybe, brick and mortar will shrink and it'll be more tech-minded, so that we would have fewer buildings, but advanced work being done. And I look forward to that day. So I don't want to build too far in the future, because I think that if we let our generation, the millennials and Generation Z and everybody to move forward with the technology, we will probably save a lot by not building brick and mortar for the near future. So I certainly agree with everybody that wants to make those movements today. And if you could give us sort of give us an update within 6 to 8 weeks to everybody here, we would certainly appreciate it. And with that, we thank you very much. And before we adjourn, we do have comments. And I'm going to start with Commissioner Barnett to my left, if you have any comments. comments at this time, sir? Okay, Commissioner Woodward.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted, I think everyone did get the email, but wanted to make sure that everyone knew this Friday, April 19th at 11 a.m., there's the press conference at the Boca Museum of Art for the new Center for Arts and Innovation. Renzo Piano is the architect that was announced. I'm sure many of you know. They've sent it hoping that any of us elected or staff can please attend. It's at 11 a.m. They're going to be revealing the design for the building. So very, very exciting. And it's also going to be the beginning of the show for all of his projects. They're bringing, it's a 3-stop tour in America, and Boca is actually going to be the first stop. And then I think it goes to New York and then LA before going off to Tokyo or something. So it's a really big deal that it's going to be here. It'll be on display from April 20th to May 19th. But that morning at 11 a.m., everyone here is invited to please come. I think that they have some big press coming to town, and they're hoping that all of us can please attend.
Very good, very
so
good.
check
Thank
your
you.
emails, and if you didn't get it, she said Andrea Virgin, which
I love
you
Andrea
work with her a
Virgin.
lot. She's fantastic. Her team's put this together, and hope that everyone can attend.
And he's an amazing architect, by the way.
Yes, it
Maybe
may
we
be the last project he takes in his lifetime because he wants to see it to completion. So this is a big deal for us.
Awesome.
But
Thank
you
you
can
so
do
much
it
for the
too.
invite. That's exciting. Commissioner Weiss.
Yes, I would like to request approval for an off-site proclamation declaring April 22nd, 2024 as Earth Day.
All those for, anybody opposed? See that it passes unanimously. Thank you so much. And Commissioner Bernard
No comments, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
and Commissioner Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. I have requested this once before, but I guess it was lost. So I'm requesting again for an offsite, approval for an offsite proclamation recognizing May 2nd as National Prayer Day.
Oh, beautiful. It was
So-
lost before. It's found again.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Once it was lost. Now it's found. We
So
have.
I'm asking again,
All those
please.
for? Okay, very good. Thank you. And Vice Mayor Marino.
Mayor, may I be recognized?
I'm sorry.
Who was the second on the proclamation?
Who is it? Okay, got it? Okay, Vice Mayor Marino.
Oh, hold on one second.
Oh, I'm
Mayor.
sorry. Go right ahead.
It's okay. So I did send a memo to everyone yesterday, and I don't know if I need to read this into the record or just file it into the record, but I had given direction, clarified direction, so now I am super clarifying direction in regards to the information that I would like to receive. And so any preference as to, I'll just read it. So it's come to my attention, it was brought to me that there's a stakeholder meeting of several stakeholders, 12 or more, let's say, that were never included in my original direction to come to a meeting to bring us back information. And I'm like, why? They don't have anything to do with the information I requested. And so the idea of this is to just specify exactly what I wanted. And I would ask going forward that if there needs to be clarification, I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for them to come and ask the person who gave the direction exactly what we meant so that we don't have to keep clarifying direction. That would be greatly appreciated. So this all came about after, obviously, these capital projects costing so much. So more specifically, the direction I would like to clarify, I would like to conduct an economic impact study only using construction prime contractors the county has used since the OEBO program has been in place to answer the following questions. How much more money does it cost construction prime contractors to use the SWMBE's requirements? If a limited amount of subcontractors are available, does it cost a prime contractor more money due to delays using them? Do the limited amount of construction subcontractors used to meet the SWMBE goals result in those contractors charging the prime contractors more money for a job? What do non-SWMBE subcontractors charge for a similar job compared to the SMWBE subcontractors? And if the overall job doesn't have enough work to meet those subcontractor requirements of the 20% goal, so meaning if a job costs $1 million, our current requirement says they have to spend at least $200,000 towards a certain amount of those subcontractors. I want to know, what if the job doesn't need a bunch of subcontractors to the point of road construction? Are they supposed to hire somebody else to do the paving and let their guys stay home? Like, I want to know what happens when that threshold isn't met. Do the subcontractors, does it force a prime contractor to pay subcontractors more money than they would normally to meet those thresholds? Two is, if there's an increase in costs, are those costs being passed on to the taxpayers? Because ultimately, it's not county paying for it, government paying for it. This is taxpayers paying for this. And how much does it cost the taxpayers overall for this like program, I guess, in general? And I guess I really am sad that I had to get to this level of clarity. But these were the exact questions I would really like just to get some minimal answers on, please.
Very good, thank you. And would you file that with the clerk, so that's a matter of public record? Commissioner Bernard, I'll recognize you after I recognize Ms. Baker. Okay, Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. In regards to your memo, Commissioner Baxter, can we do it for not just the SMWB, but also the SBE, so that way we know, because I think there's a difference between the SBE, so let's get it for both, if you don't mind.
Do the SBEs have, I guess, is that a different level of prime contractors, construction contracts? Because I guess, I wanted to know cost of building and infrastructure,
Sure.
those type of things.
Ms. Baker, can you
And thank you for the clarification. We actually invited a number of our members or industry, because that was the direction, to talk to industry on this about primes and the sub-cost. And so the reason we reached out to a number of them is because primes belong to different industry organizations. So we couldn't just go to one industry. We had to reach out to all. We're looking for primes because some subs also work as primes depending on what they bid, what type of project it is. And they then utilize subs. So we're trying to gather as many of those individuals. We're meeting tonight. I think it's about 12 that is actually meeting with us tonight. And then we're going to meet with another group that wasn't able to meet tonight.
That's
That's okay. I just want to make sure that we're inclusive. We invited NAWIC, which is the National Association of Women in Construction. We invited a slew of them, including...
But do they bid on our contracts?
Yes, they do.
I guess the point is if they've never bid or had done work, how would they know the cost?
Because some of those primes have bidded. Subs have bidded with primes because they come in as a team. And so what we want to do is make sure we're inclusive when we bring you back the info. The last thing I want to do is come back to you with the information, and then I've got people in the audience that said, you never talked to us, you didn't ask us any questions. So the people we receive the input from, we know whether they're primes, we've got our database, so when they sign in, we'll know who's providing us that information.
But specifically, this is the counties. If they've never had a contract with the county, I don't really want their input because I want people who are first-hand knowledge of this, not assumptions, not other counties, first-hand knowledge. So if they've never been awarded a contract with the county, now, if there's additional separate direction, I'm okay with that, but that's additional and separate from this question, because I didn't give direction my intention, even if it was misunderstood, was not to give that direction.
You gave us direction, because I went back and watched it a couple of times. You gave us direction to meet with industry. And so to us, industry meant being inclusive.
But then when they came back, yeah.
Well, then just one
what
second.
you clarified, we will do so. We have no problem doing that. They belong to different organizations. They don't all belong to one. So we need to know. Now, what we've asked for is documentation to that effect. And we're going to be looking for that documentation because I can't come back to you with information that I don't have true documentation for. And I don't know if the groups are going to be willing to give us that type of information. But I do know that when if the board moves forward with the consultant in the contract. They are going to, part of their requirement is to do an economic impact on what this type program will have on the county. So again, we'll definitely meet with them, but I want to make sure, now that you've clarified, we can do that, but I want to make sure that this board is also telling me to hire a separate third party to do the analysis that's going to be done if the board moves forward with the contract for the SMWBE program.
Commissioner
Because it's going to be done
would you want this
again.
to appear on an agenda so that we can have the information and discuss it thoroughly?
It was direction. I think the point of getting to this level, I don't want another agenda and another discussion and another, I think it is useful information, decided to make decisions going forward, and I don't mind including SBEs. The only requirement that I'm really wanting is that people have actually had contracts. Those prime construction contractors. That is it, and I would love to have the third party and provide that information, and so that we are not relying, because I think, as I have heard, and maybe everybody else, maybe not, is that they're worried about if we have a third party come in and do it, they're not going to worry or hesitate about giving information. I think they will hesitate because they have to deal with our staff on a daily basis submitting contracts. I think giving them a level of comfort, giving us a level of comfort, knowing a third party is doing it is great, and we can make more informed decision going forward. I'm sorry it got so,
Well,
but
no,
this is
you're
just the
entitled to
information
it.
that I think is important
Sure.
for us to have.
Okay. Ms. Baker, do you have a recommendation as to how we can respond to this?
It's really the direction of the board.
right?
That's why we set up the meeting, because it was a directive, and we set up those meetings. We'll, talk to the subs, primes. Part of our ordinance does require primes to bid out things. So that information is readily available. We also, for hard bids, we're looking at and have that information where we know who bids what, because it's a hard bid. So we've got all of that data. It's the RFPs that folks are responding to.
me hear
So
from-
you just tell us what you want us to do. I just want to make sure the board is well aware that if we move forward with the SBE study, that whomever wins will be looking at the economic impact of such a program, and we'll be bringing that back as a part of what we bring back to the board.
Let me recognize Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I would like to just be cautious that we exclude anyone who hasn't been awarded a contract, because that doesn't mean they haven't bid with us necessarily. And we have a number of primes who, maybe they don't bid with us as often, but they're bidding with some of our municipalities or some of the taxing districts. They're doing government work and would have valuable input for this. And maybe they have bid with us and they've lost because some of these,
May I
to answer some of
respond?
You will, sure.
but to answer some of these questions, and they still may have valuable input. So I wouldn't want to exclude a contractor just because they haven't been awarded. If they have tried to do work with us or they do other governmental work, I think that it will be valuable. I'd just like to put that in there.
And now Commissioner Baxter, go ahead.
So I'm only talking, because this only pertains to our program, not other municipals. They have their own SMWBE program, so then it's not comparing apples to apples. We're comparing apples to oranges, because our program isn't exactly like municipalities' SMWBE. I'm just trying to get specific to our program, and is it like that cost analysis? And the reason I say contractors or primes who have been awarded is because they're the only ones who would truly have that firsthand knowledge of what the cost increase to them has been due to our program.
But if they've bid and lost the bid because of this, that would still be valuable information for us to know.
Again, not something I asked. I don't mind adding that. Absolutely. If we want to add that as a question, how many subcontractors prime construction contractors have lost out due to our policy? I would absolutely love to know that as well.
Or maybe it would just be an additional question, but I wouldn't want to make it too narrow, because then we're going to get very narrow answers. And I think we need a broader answer from this. And the ones who bid and lose regularly would also have valuable information. So,
All right. Vice Mayor Marino, but I can see Ms. Baker has something to say.
Just to add, your point is well taken, because when we put out a bid, they all have to follow the same requirements to be responsive to the bid or the proposal. And so the best price comes in, especially if it's a hard bid, it's lowest bid, cost, that's it, nothing else. For RFPs, then it's the dollar amount does play a role, but there are other factors that are included. And so you only have one, we may narrow it down to 3, but it may only be one that actually wins the bid. But they're all bidding, and they all have to adhere to the requirements that's in the RFP or the bid, or they're found non-responsive. So it would definitely provide input.
could I just follow up one?
Sure, go right ahead, Commissioner.
So if we were to get a multiple primes bidding on this work, I can't say that this is for sure how they would do it, but as they put in their numbers, have they probably locked in the sub that would be required to fit the parameters according to, whatever percentages have been put into the goal setting committee? So whatever sub they've chosen is not available for the other primes to also lock in, because typically they're going to kind of agree to a price with that prime, and they're not going to give, every prime, they're not going to bid to each one, or the prime wouldn't accept that as part of their bid, right?
Well, one of the things that, when that happens, because there are areas we have limited subs in. There are areas. And so in that particular case, they have a right. Ms. Johnson, you want to join me and make sure I stay on the straight and narrow here? There are opportunities for them to come back in, and if they've made an earnest effort and they give us that information that it's just not there, then we can lower that amount or waive it altogether, depending on what's out there and if they've made an earnest effort to go out and recruit. We have a database of SMWBEs that we utilize. We also have, if they are working with someone who's not a certified small business or SMWBE, they can pay $300. We expedite them coming in, and then they're in the database. So there are a myriad of things that we do in order to make sure that we're not penalizing the prime if the volume of subs are not there to choose from. And just also want to point out that when a prime has a problem with a sub on the job, we require them to let the Office of Small Business know. And if we can't get that sub right, they can get rid of that sub and hire another like sub. So we try to work, because it's in our best interest to pay the least amount as possible, reasonable. But we want to make sure our projects work, they come in on time and on budget.
I would like the answers to the questions that you had. I didn't want to necessarily limit it to only ones who've been awarded the contracts. If they're actively bidding, if they're certified with us, and maybe that is just a part B to your question, but.
Yeah, I'd say if you want me to, I don't know if you need it written in, but add to the direction, because my answer is for just the primes. I don't mind, I love more information, but I was trying to keep this as efficient and narrow down specifically what I wanted, because I think that'd be valuable. If we would like to add another question to include non-primes or people who have not been awarded a contract, and to the question of have they lost out and why they feel they lost out on those contracts, that's great. How many waivers to date have been issued or allowed for?
I don't have that total number with me, but I can certainly provide it to the board.
Would you say 5, 10, 20, approximately?
Approximately maybe 20. I know in this quarter, we've had 6 in this quarter. But are you talking from 2019 to now?
I guess I was talking historically, yeah. From the,
so I would prefer to give you the exact number, and I can just give you that just as soon as I get back to the office. I can send an email.
So, yeah, I mean, to follow up, I have no problem with the more information, but I do want these from specific, just how it's written. I don't mind adding absolutely a question, but because I think that is information that if somebody's been awarded, and I think Commissioner Marino's been waiting a while to talk, so I'm going to stop.
No, you can continue. I just want to make sure, Commissioner Woodward, have you completed? Okay, very good. All right, Vice Mayor, go right ahead.
Thank you. What I had interpreted as Commissioner Baxter's question was really to ask what the effect was on the primes. So the primes should be the ones answering the question. And I believe that the primes that lost should be included in that question, not just necessarily the primes that won.
Is that correct,
was my
Commissioner Baxter?
takeaway.
If
Is
you
there- would you like
think
to-
that would be valuable to add to this, I just want to make sure that they have that firsthand knowledge to apply.
So would the clerk add that to the request, please? Go ahead, Vice Mayor, do you have anything else?
I think it is important because I think that in order for them to be responsive, they had to go through the whole process and include the subs. And if they lost because of their price, we need to know that. If by bringing in the subs made their price go up, we need to know that. I do have a question as to how we're doing this, and is this part of the overall study that we're doing, and these are additional questions, or are we doing two? I don't want to pay for redundancies. We're trying to be as efficient as possible. So I would like to, is this part of the?
Initially, I mean, it was separate because if we do it together, to your point of being efficient, then we're saying we're definitely, I wanted this information before we spent, it was a big price tag, if I remember correctly. Yeah, like $700,000. So this was kind of like another tool for us to use when, are we going to then spend another $700,000 for another study? I think something more simplistic study wouldn't cost to that effect. If you want to do it all together, I leave that to my board, but I think whether we do it separately or together, this is valuable information.
So, okay, go ahead, Vice Mayor.
It would sound like this would be a precursor. And obviously then this question wouldn't be done in the big general study, so it wouldn't be redundant. And I see where the commissioner is going with this. I did have one more question. As a percentage of small businesses in our county, because 90% of our businesses in the county are small business, how many of those are current vendors or partners with primes? I think that would be a good question to know, because if of the 98% of our small businesses, only 1% of them is dealing with a prime and working on county contracts, we're jumping through a lot of hoops. I'm just saying, don't kill the messenger, but I think that would be important information to know.
Okay, well, we've got a number of points here. Commissioner Weiss and then Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you. Look, and Commissioner Baxter, I understand what you're trying to understand, which is what having this program, what that ultimately is costing. I think, but I think it's also important to understand what the economic impact of that is as well. To have a cost without understanding the economic benefits of it, as we're trying to build small businesses up in our county. We talked earlier. We're having a discussion. And you were a big proponent of the ability to create wealth through housing, building a business, and having access to taxpayer dollars that you help pay, and having that opportunity to be able to participate in that economic activity. There's a huge benefit to our community. So I support getting the cost. Facts, we should always be able to look at our facts and understand exactly, so I appreciate that. But I also want to know that the economic impact of having those businesses being able to both survive and grow in our economic environment. So My concern is, I think we have an SBE study that we're trying to do. I think they need to be combined. You know, getting one without the other just is going to lead to more questions on my mind. And as to the question regarding the records, you know, what last time when we did the diversity study, and I hate to bring up what we went through with our contractor there, but that contractor wouldn't give, we had to go to court and sue them to get our records when we wanted to actually see the real data. And I know we learned our lesson, and we don't do that again with our contracts. We make very clear that this is our data and we own it, and it's to be turned over to us. So then I would think our contractors, our primes, would have no issue sharing that, because it's everything they do with us is a public record. So,
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. You know, I initially supported us, you know, Commissioner Baxter's approach, but I disagree with this idea of let's create a special niche study so we can have prime contractors who would basically, based on what information that they've given us, that would be the study that we would use to basically block and prevent women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, opportunities in this county. This would be stupid for us to do that we would take just a study, this approach that says now, well, all of a sudden, everything, we don't need to do a disparity study because a certain niche of people just decided that, well, it costs too much money. We don't get to know the benefit of creating opportunities. This is just stupid if that's the route that we're going. You know, people fought hard to get the opportunity. People they spend money on taxes, and this is county government. And what you're saying is let's do a special study to just let a special group of people decide whether or not others can just get a small piece of the pie. Like, where we're going with this, it should be included as part of, if we're going with the disparity study, it's included as part of that, not a secret special study that's going to block people from having opportunities. I have 3 daughters, and they are black females, and they need opportunities in this county. Like, we can't just create this, oh, let's get a special group of people who's going to decide who's going to get an opportunity. Folks, people need to get chances to get opportunities in this county. It cannot just be a few. Everybody pays taxes. To do this study, you have to get it legally. There's so many things that needs to be done, and we have to adhere to all of that. Let's follow the process and to do that. But that shouldn't be this secret study that's just going to decide what we do.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I appreciate that. Commissioner Baxter.
Just to repeat, I never intended this to be a secret study or super special. And if we want to make it a part of the overall larger study, I also said I'm okay with that. So if that is the direction that we are heading, I am saying these are questions that we need to answer. I am saying that I've had to clarify 3 different times. I never think, I mean, to the point of having a small percentage of, I'm also, last I checked, a woman, that would also benefit, you know, as a woman-owned business, if we had that percentage to this program. So this would personally affect or benefit myself. So this doesn't come down to that. I still think we need to look at an overall picture of the most amount of people we can help. And we have over 1.6 million taxpayers in Palm Beach County, and a lot of them are struggling. And if we can relieve some of those financial burdens and reduce costs, if it showed that, if not, then okay. But without that information, we don't know those answers. And so I am okay if it is this board's direction to add that as a part of the overall disparity study. But I absolutely want, the answers. So thank you.
Very good. I think we've resolved this. Somebody speaking? Okay. Hold on just a sec. I think that the members of the board have come to a conclusion. And please speak up. I know you will if I don't synthesize this correctly, but I think what we all want is information about how these things are resolved, and that should be made available to all members of the board. And I think that after we receive that information, if we wish to discuss it further, or modify it, or change it, or contest it, or affirm it, then we can do it at that time. Will you be, who will be responsible for providing this information, Ms. Baker?
I will, as your administrator, I will be following up, but I want to make sure I understand
The information
board's
that we're
direction, yes.
requesting? All right. And if I could have Commissioner Baxter, who started this request, give us specifically, and I want the clerk to make sure that you get all this information down. So could you say specifically what it is that you're requesting?
Specifically, the
Commissioner?
direction is to answer the questions on the memo with two changes. One being that Commissioner Marino would also like to include construction prime contractors that weren't necessarily awarded the contract.
We can give you that.
And then two, I think Commissioner Woodward had her question, which was a valid one as well. Did you want to specify that question?
Commissioner Woodward, do you want to articulate it?
No, I was what Commissioner Marino said, just
Okay,
not that
just
they
that
had to
one
be
change.
awarded.
Okay.
Anyone who's bid with us.
And we would add these to the disparity study
Right.
as a whole. So we
Correct.
would do one big study, and this would be a part of it.
So
And
just collect the data, and then whomever wins the RFP as our consultant, we would share with them that information that we're collecting. Because they're going to do their own, because they have to validate their own
I guess that's what I'm
information.
asking. Do they have to then provide it to staff, to then provide it to the consultant?
The consultant, the last time we went through this, the consultant reaches out. We provide backup
That's what I'm asking, because
support.
you said we are receiving it, and then I think, I'm just making sure I'm understanding.
You asked us, I just want to make sure what we're doing.
Okay.
You asked us to reach out to industry, specifically primes, right?
I think we're changing that. Now we're
Okay.
just adding these to the disparity study.
Yes, we can
Okay.
do that, and it's in the
Then the
RFP.
consultant, right, it's in the RFP, and we've made sure in the RFP is that there's no proprietary information.
Yeah,
right?
they'll identify what's proprietary, and then you redact that. You don't turn that over to the public.
Would it be possible for accurate information, if they verify that they're a prime, either been awarded or not awarded, that the prime's name could be redacted?
Now, let me suggest something, Commissioner Baxter. Let's have them get this information, and then, as I stated before, if there's anything that you would like to, change, confirm, redact, then we can do it at that time.
Does it have to be part of the RFP?
Commissioner Baxter.
That's what I want to clear.
At
this
The
point, we're
lawyer's
not
got
doing
his-
anything, right?
Let's
just a
hear from the
question.
lawyer.
Commissioner Baxter.
Sure, go ahead.
I guess the question,
Wait.
hold on one second.
Commissioner Bernard, go ahead.
So the question that I just want to know is, the information, do you want the company that's doing the disparity study, do you want them to get it directly from the prime contractors? I think it's better if it's coming directly from the prime contractors. So if there's no filter, so in that way,
That's what I was asking.
the question that you're asking, like, hey, the county staff invited who and all of that kind of stuff, you won't have to deal with that if we can just have, when we do the disparity study, they can reach out and the specific memo says, this is what we would like to get, and for them to get it directly from the prime, and then so now it's not filtered to county staff. Would that work for you?
That's exactly what I was saying, so thank you for reiterating in a perfect manner. And I guess what I was asking about the reduction, can they opt in or out of having their information revealed.
When we did the
When
last
the
disparity
consultant does
study,
it?
when the consultant did it, they made sure that there was some type of, to block information, so in that way, it would protect us when we're making decisions, so.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of that the consultant would do, so we don't expose that prime, because sometimes because you want them to be honest.
Right.
And if you're gonna reveal their information, then sometimes they may not want to be as honest. So the disparity study person would limit that
100%.
information for you.
100. So do you need more clarification? Because I think.
Well, let's just find out.
Crystal.
Okay, we're all clear?
Crystal
To my
clear.
left? Okay.
We're going to follow the consultant group, whoever we bring to the board and you approve. They'll have all of that information. And if I remember correctly, that was part of the issue. That's why the consultant would not release that type of information, because she was trying to protect the people she had spoken with and didn't want to release their information. So that's the two-edged sword, because if you're going to protect the prime, you need to protect the others.
Right, I understand. So, Mr. Clerk, do we have that specifically? Okay, very, very good. And of course, we want to hear from our good lawyer at the right.
And just a question, if we're dealing with public records, whether something can be redacted is going to have to be in compliance with public records law. So I don't know exactly how it was done last time, so I mean, we can certainly look at that.
Identify the proprietary type information.
Certainly, it's
So we
trade
can
secrets and
protect
things
it.
of that nature, certainly.
Right.
So you're okay, Mr. Attorney, on this?
Yes.
Okay, I know you are, Commissioner Baxter, but
I'm okay, I'm just
Making
with the
sure.
caveat that anything that's redacted is going to have to comply with public records law.
Right.
So.
right, exactly. Right, exactly. Okay. And Vice Mayor Marino, do you have your light on?
I do, because I wanted to also include what percentage of small businesses are vendors or subs as a percentage of how many small businesses we have in the county. So I just wanted to make sure that was included also. Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So good. All right. And I think I called on you, Commissioner Baxter, for any last comment. No. So very good. Thank you. And now Vice Mayor Marino. Any comment?
Okay, another hot topic.
No, okay,
Let's
we're
go with
adjourned.
no, we're not. Let's go with the easy one first. Commissioner Woodward, I will not be there on Friday because I'm going to be speaking at the Resilient and Sustainable Infrastructure Lessons from Global Cities at FAU. That should be fun. I had, putting on a more serious hat, obviously I think a bunch of us had Representative Caruso in our office this week talking about a particular project in Delray. And given that we've taken the $200 million renovation off the table for South County, we're going to have people that are going to come in and give us projects that they think are perfect for the wedge site. It's not up for us to say one project is better than another. I think as a board, we need to decide whether we want to actually dispose of that site. And if we do, no. South County. And if we do, then we need an RFP. So I'm just kind of putting it out there. I'm starting the discussion. Because it is a financial discussion, and I'm not done after that.
If I may, Commissioner Ismi Ayala, FDO Director, we're actually coming back to the board in June. We just had a meeting with our consultants last week. The parking study for that site was completed. You may remember last time we came to this board, we received direction to cover two aspects. Number one, get a funding plan together, and number two, do a parking study to see if you have the ability to reduce the number of parking spaces and therefore reduce the overall cost. Now we have an answer to both questions, and therefore we are in the process, as we speak, of drafting an agenda item, coming back to the board, informing you of the results of that parking study. I'm gonna go ahead and advance the punchline. It's about 500 spaces reduction of the overall structure parking, which carries a significant reduction as well on the overall cost. And we're coming back, hopefully, first meeting in June with all the information, requesting direction from that point forward.
Okay, appreciated.
Thanks for staying, Ms. Claus.
And also, while Representative Caruso was in the office, I asked him to look into the state property, the old courthouse on Palm Beach Lakes Boulevard, to see if that could come into county hands for affordable housing. And I've also had the same discussion with CFO Petronas. So hopefully with 2 bites of the apple, we'll get some information, because if anybody drives by that building on any time of day or night, there might be 1 or 2 cars in there. So let's repurpose that property. So everybody's coming to the county for our property. Let's go to the state for some of theirs. And with that, I'm done.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you. And thank you for bringing up the meeting with the Representative Caruso. And I had a similar meeting, and I wanted to just share that I mentioned to him part of the reason that we're having to delay that project is the significant health department costs, and he immediately promised to help us run an appropriations bill to get some funding for that, so we can hold him to that as we have future discussions in June, that to get some funding to help pay for that part of it. So,
I hope
thanks for
you're
bringing that up.
listening, Representative Caruso, because you called me as well, so we'll hold your feet to the fire. I'd just like to say that I have an off-site proclamation recognizing the 21st anniversary of the Florida Outreach Center for the Blind.
Motion to request an off-site proclamation for the Center of the Blind.
Excellent, thank you. Got a second? Oh, the clerk is so good. All those for. Anybody opposed? I'll be attending the Miami Tech Summit tomorrow, and I'll bring back some, either some techies to help us out or some innovative things that we can work with here in the county. And if there is no one else who wants to speak, I'm going to adjourn at this time. Thank you. You're awesome, everybody. Thank you.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.